All right, it's November 29, 2018. We'll bring to order the public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals. First order of business is pending decisions. On decision on application 3011, is there a motion?
I so move.
To accept? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye and aye. Okay, there are two letters of adjournment requesting such, number 3007 and number 3010. Can I get a motion to
Move we
adjourn?
accept these requests for adjournment.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Just for the record, the meeting is on December 20th.
Yes.
Can I have that 3011, please?
3011.
Yeah, and 3005 while we're at it. So I understand we have a decision on 3005, is that correct?
Well, you haven't closed the public hearing yet, so you need to open the hearing, and reopen the hearing, have the applicant have anything else to offer, and then you can close it and consider it.
On 3005, for the applicant.
Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. This application was heard several months ago and was adjourned to give our consultant and Mr. Voorhees a chance to talk about certain design features for the rain garden, which has now been accomplished, and I believe that the concerns and issues were addressed.
Is there a motion to close the hearing?
You might want to hear from your consultant.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
Yes, we did receive a report from Drew Bennett dated November 5th and reviewed it. It addressed all of our comments and questions. And the plans from the Rayner Group and Mr. Bennett's office were found to be acceptable, and you have a draft decision that identifies the environmental benefits of this project. We feel there is a net environmental benefit and meets all the design criteria that we were looking for. So you have that for your consideration this evening.
Any further input from the board?
No, good.
From the room? All in favor of closing the application? I mean, is there a motion to
I
do
move that
so?
we close the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye and aye.
So you have draft special conditions presented by your environmental consultant for the approval of a special wetland permit for the application.
We have a decision including draft specifications, conditions for the approval of 3005.
I so move.
I'll second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And aye.
Thank you.
You have the one abstention there when you fill out the form. Jim. Anything you feel.
Here's a form. But I don't see the decision. No, I don't see. Do you have a decision on that? I don't see the decision form on this, of course.
Oh, this is a sign.
Thank you. All right. Pending cases. 3009, 78 White Street. The applicant.
Good evening. Bruce Fetchery, 293 Bayport Avenue, Bayport, New York, for the applicant Ray Smith and Associates. Good evening. When it was last on and I was here back in September, the board approved the sign, provided we submitted a plan for a 3-foot by 6-foot sign. The original plan called for a 3-foot by 8-foot sign. We've submitted the amended plan, and I thought it was pretty much would be completed upon submission of the smaller sign. So we've submitted that, and hopefully everything's in order.
Okay, is there any input from the board?
Just want to clarify, I don't believe the board approved anything. What they had asked you to do is consider some alternatives, and my understanding is you did submit an alternative on October.
My understanding was that it was approved. The board said we would be in favor if you submitted a sign that was 3 feet by 6 feet, and you had indicated that you thought there had been opposition by some members of the public to it, but that was considered at the last meeting, so.
But we didn't have a formal vote. I understand that.
Okay.
I recall I asked a couple of questions about the status of the existing sign on the property. You made a presentation that you were replacing that sign, and the sign on the property now, does it have a permit?
There is no sign that's been placed on the property by my client.
Well, we understand, but you submitted a photograph showing a sign, and your presentation was that you were replacing that sign.
Right, that sign's no longer there.
Okay. That sign never had a permit, though, did it?
That was the sign of our predecessor. It was there. I don't know whether it was grandfathered, but it was there a long time, and it's larger than the sign we're submitting today.
And what are the size of the signs in the other photograph? Just asking.
Well, I submitted it back in September, but it was 80 White Street. It was the corner of White Street and Windmill Lane. I don't have the dimensions of those signs, but...
80 White Street is adjacent to this property, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
78.
That's right, we're 78.
And there's two signs there. I think your picture shows 2 signs for 80 White Street.
3.
Right, and that's next door. Across the street, the bank has a sign. That's a large sign. I don't know the dimensions of the signs that the comps are, but I have the photographs of them.
Do any of those signs have permits?
This was discussed last time we were here, and you had brought the question up, and the board said it wasn't my job to check and see whether they had permits, that the signs were up. The police department has a sign. I'm sure that sign's legal.
Well, you know,
The bank has a
municipal
sign.
signs are
I
exempt.
haven't checked to see whether they're legal, and I didn't think it was my obligation. I thought the board stated that last time.
Any further input from the room? Yes, sir.
My name is John Vetta. I own the property at 212 Windmill Lane, so on the corner of White Street and Windmill, and I did put a letter in opposition. And all the signage on our buildings are as they should be. They're on the wall of the property. The 2 signs to the west, the building to the west, which is that rather attractive European sort of masonry building. It's an attractive building, but our research in the building department show that those 2 freestanding signs have no permits. 3 of them, there are no permits for them. No variances were issued. It's a transitional area. You know, you're right into the residential area, and I would humbly suggest that that there's been no showing necessary for the relief. There's been no showing that the signage can't be accomplished as it is on my commercial buildings, period, with just signs mounted on the walls. So I think particularly where you have an office district going into a residential district, the whole idea is to make it more of a residential setting. I don't see any need for them. The Bridgehampton National Bank sign is simply there to direct traffic into the drive-in, which of course would be necessary, but there's no need need for this. And again, the signs that are being touted as precedent, which are the signs to the west, I checked with the building department, my office checked with the building department, and they do not appear to be legal.
Right, we understand that. Mr. Bennett, there's a sign on those buildings I think you own, lease out for a painting company, or is
Oh, it's a little plastic sign.
is that being painted all the time, or is that a painting operation?
It's a painting operation. It's a little push-in sign. I'll tell them to take it down.
It's not, yeah, it's no
that's fine.
permit there.
It's a little, it's like a little campaign sign. Yeah, I don't find them very attractive, but I'll tell them to remove it tomorrow. I just noticed that today myself.
Okay.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just if I may just interject, I've discussed with my client, the tree in front of the premises is a Craig Myrtle tree. My client's a landscape architect. I mean, it's a beautiful tree. It would have to be ripped down to put a building a sign on the building. So we thought, for aesthetics purposes, it would certainly. This is a lovely sign we're offering to put up, and to remove a beautiful tree like that that's been in that location for many years. It's a flowering tree, quite expensive. It would really be, not suitable.
Number one, I don't know why we should hold this man responsible for what's going on at the house next door. It's got nothing to do with his application.
Correct.
Number two, we gave him the idea that if he reduced the size of the sign, we'd be willing to go along with it. Let's go along with it.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem with the sign. It's a reduced size, and I think the other buildings that have illegal signs should be coming in here so that we can reduce the size of those signs, and maybe have it be consistent on the street rather than...
That's their problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, my client didn't hire me. He's trying to follow the law. He's made an application before this board, He had considered putting it up and then maybe asking for forgiveness, but I said it's better to ask for permission. So that's what I'm here to do.
Any further input? Would you like to close it for decision? Or
Or do you want to give a
It's
decision?
your choice. I don't have a
let's do a
decision ready.
decision. huh?
Yeah, I'm fine. Clear it.
Okay, on
Close the public hearing.
application, all right, move to close for public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to accept the application as amended by this board, number 3009?
So moved.
Is there a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have a form for that, either, a vote form, I don't know.
No vote for me?
Yeah, well, there's no decision written. Give it back, Jim. Let's see what happens later. On the application 3013, is there anyone here, if the Strunk's here?
Good evening. So following the meeting last...
applicant?
Kurt Strunk on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Strunk, did you provide, this was, I understand, re-noticed? Did you provide
Yes, so we have,
extra
right,
minutes?
we had,
Thank you.
Could you turn it the other way?
So the essence of our remit following last month's meeting was to, one, get everything properly noticed, and two, depict everything on the survey. So what I've just handed out and what's been put on the table is a depiction of the survey. And as you see, we are looking for, really, the notice that we sent out has three components. One is the 48 square foot addition, which has been noticed and is shown on the survey. The second is the pool equipment setback, which has been fully noticed and is depicted on the survey. The third is the parking. As we discovered last time, when we initially built the parking in the front of the house, that parking was built with a setback of 5 feet off of the property line. We had been informed by the building department that that was the applicable setback. However, in the meeting last month, we found out that the applicable setback was 10 feet. We spoke to the building department about it. They said it was an honest mistake. So we're asking for relief there so that we can have this setback as built to 5 feet off of the sidewalk. And then we're also asking for, since we're here, an additional parking space with a 0-foot setback off of the southern property line, which is a cemetery. Now, the house is currently 3-bedroom, but in the event that we were to add a bedroom, ultimately it would be useful to have that third parking space. So that's why we're asking for that. And those are really our requests to you tonight. We did have a back and forth last time regarding the issue of the private driveway dispute. And as I think you probably understand, a private driveway dispute is not a dispute that should be adjudicated before a zoning board. And that the neighbor's request to move a fence that's been there for decades, we would never have a court ever tell us that we would have to move that fence. It's been there for decades. Despite that, nevertheless, we want to make everyone happy. So what we've done in this survey, we've shown what we propose to do with the fence. We propose to align the fence with the edge of the right-of-way. And so the alleged encroachment as part of the private driveway dispute would be addressed as part of our plan.
What kind of fence is that? Right now,
Well,
there's a
right now
stockade
it's
fence, right? Or some sort?
It's
a
an
wood
8-foot,
fence?
yeah.
Wood
It's an
fence.
8-foot fence. It's been there for...
And this says proposed pool fence, so is that 4 foot?
Well, no, you know what? As you heard the neighbors last time, they want the same type of fencing to be consistent across that northern property edge. So we're happy to continue the fence that's there and just have it be consistent all the way to the end of the right-of-way.
So just for the record, maybe you can tell us what those specifications are so that everybody's clear what kind of fence is going to be put there?
Oh, well, I'd appreciate your guidance as to what would require, because off the top of my head, I don't know what's permissible.
No,
what's
it
not
sounds like
permissible.
you're trying to achieve two purposes there. One is your pool fence, and make sure it complies to the state law on your pool enclosure, but it sounds like you're trying to do some sort of fence that provides screening as well. So I
That's
would
correct.
suggest you talk to the building department. You can provide in writing some specification for us for the record.
Sure, we'd be happy to undertake to do that and to provide that.
So, yeah, about it this way.
Remember, one of the questions also had to do with the septic system? The survey that you had originally submitted said it was all proposed, and
Right. so
Some
we've-
indication that there was an existing, and now this shows an existing and a relocation?
Right, so the sanitary system that you see there is existing. It was the one that was installed, and I did speak to the installer about it. I can provide you with a copy of the installer's certification on the system.
Now you're relocating it?
No, we're not relocating the main tank. What we're relocating is one of the overflow tanks. Essentially, when we put it in, there was landscaping in the way that we would have had to move to get it into the intended location, and at the time it was being installed, we were unable to move that landscaping, but given the setback on the pool and where we want the pool to be, we're going to move it so that it's so that we meet that 20-foot minimum setback from the pool. It's just one of the overflow tanks. It's not the entire system.
The other relief you're looking for is on the pool equipment. Can you explain? It appears to be a box on your survey. Is that a
That's
structure?
correct. We were asked by the board to locate the proposed pool equipment on the survey, so we've done that. The box would indicate the location. As to the form of that, I'm not aware of how that's typically done.
Both
so
lines just indicate area, not structure.
That's correct. It was to designate the location of the equipment.
So just for the record, summarize the three variances that you're seeking. My understanding, you're not looking for any relief for the proposed pool, and that complies to all zoning requirements, correct?
That is correct. So the three areas of relief that we're looking for are, one, the proposed addition, as we talked about last month, the pre-existing non-conforming distance between the corner of our house and the edge of the property line is 4 feet 8 inches currently, and with the proposed 48 square foot addition, that setback would be reduced to 4 feet 4 inches. So that's the first component of our request to you. The second component is the pool equipment, which we just referred to. We're requesting a 5-foot setback where 20 feet is required under the code. And then the third is the parking spaces. 2 of those parking spaces already exist, and they are set back at 5 feet from the front property line, which was based on the information I was provided by the building department. But in fact, given that we're in the zoning district, the office district, we would have to go to a 10-foot setback on those. So we're asking for those existing spaces to be permitted under a variance. And we're also asking for the third parking space, which is on the south side of the property with a 0-foot setback as shown on the survey. And those are our 3 requests to you. We don't need a variance for the pool. We have the pool permit.
You have a permit for the pool?
Yes.
That was going to be my other question. I looked through, and I don't recall if we asked you or not, but we don't seem to have anything in our files with a certificate of occupancy for the premises or any. It would be helpful if you get us a copy of that, and as well as the pool permit.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I know that was on my list, and I do have it electronically, but I apologize, I do not have it in hard copy tonight, but I'll certainly undertake to provide the board a copy.
And the only other question is on your elevations, it appears on the back of the addition that you're proposing, there's a chimney, but that's not shown on the survey.
Yeah, none of the house has 3 or 4 chimneys. None of the chimneys are shown on the survey, but it is shown in the location of the chimney is shown in the,
Right, but this would be a proposed chimney that you're putting the addition on? It's on that back side?
yes.
So you should just make sure that's shown on your survey. I have no further questions.
Well, there are no chimneys on the survey, sir.
You're not adding any chimneys, are you?
Yeah, he's adding,
He is.
He's adding a
he's
chimney?
adding one.
A fireplace.
Yeah, it's shown on the architect's drawings.
I don't even know how you show it.
Right, we're just trying to make sure the plans are consistent.
Is the chimney going to be proud of the addition? In other words, 2 feet out from the outside, or is it
No,
going
it's
to be
going to
within
be
the addition?
flush to the addition.
Excuse me?
Flush,
Flush.
so it'll be in it.
In it.
It's not going to
Won't change.
extend out, it's
Your
not going to
architectural
change the
plans show
survey.
otherwise.
That is correct, so if you'd like, we can submit an updated version of this.
Whatever you're proposing, we just like to have whatever you're proposing in the record correctly, so that there's no confusion later.
Understood. Well, what I'll undertake to do then is I will provide you a revised version of the architect's drawings, which shows the chimney flush to the, if that's acceptable.
That's acceptable, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Any input from the board? Questions, comments?
I think it's pretty clear.
It is. Any input from the room? We adjourn for all purposes?
I think, unless the board doesn't have any problems, as long as you can get, so our work session is on December 11th. If you can get the revised survey, the COs, and the architectural plans that you just talked about, with those revisions, we could probably have a decision for our meeting on the 20th.
Just to clarify, you say revised survey.
Well, the survey should show the chimney that is extending out, if it's not,
Or the plans.
or the plans, one or the
The
other.
plans will show this chimney. It's
But
not
if it's
going to extend.
extending
It's not going to
outside the
extend
building,
outside the building.
If it's not, then you're fine. But
Okay.
if it is,
Yes.
then you have to revise that.
And my wife was kind enough to bring, we have one copy of the CO, if that would help.
That's helpful.
It's our only copy, so if you,
Since you have to submit the other information, submit it all together with a cover letter, that would be great.
sounds good, and we'll get that to you before your work session, which is December
11.
11th. Okay. Well, thank you for your
Pretty close,
attention.
it's just a week from next Tuesday.
Okay. I appreciate your attention this evening. Thank you.
So is there a motion to close for decision pending?
Get the public?
Oh, I'm sorry, I think we did. Anybody in the room have anything to say? I think we did do that. But anyway, is there a motion to close for decision pending the requested materials?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Number 3014, 0 Squabble Lane.
Good evening for the applicant, John Bennett, Reed. With me is the project architect, Jim McMullen, and then Steve Marotta from Aries Design, who's the landscape architect, and my associate Bailey Larkin is here as well. This is an application to add certain living area and porch areas to the existing house. And so we did file, we received a memo from Mr. Voorhees with comments on the plan that had been submitted with the application, and we did file revised materials in response, including a revised EAF and a site plan and landscape plans, and Mr. Naroda is here to talk about that if you need it. Oh, that, what you're receiving now is a response to a letter that we received from Ms. Riley's office this afternoon. I know there was some concern from Ms. Riley's client about the second-story porch and deck that was extending across the northerly elevation of the property. So you'll see, based upon the the revised plans, that we have reduced the porch by pulling it back from the east side of the residence about 20 feet. We used to run the entire length of the porch. I do note, however, that as we submitted in our response to both a letter from Ms. Riley's client as well as Ms. Riley, if you look at the aerial on the property, it's hard from my point of view anyway to understand how this northwesterly facing porch running now in a reduced length across the facade of the property, rather the facade of the house, could have any effect on the Ms. Riley's client's property, since it is that property in between the house and Ms. Riley's client's property. There's a tennis court, and the house is substantially to the east of the proposed porch of Zero Squabble Lane. It's interesting that, believe it or not, waterfront-facing porches have been a subject of a decent amount of litigation. There was a case coming out of Shelter Island, Baker versus Brownlee, in which the Second Department said it's obvious why people want a porch, even a second-story porch, on facing a water feature, and absent some demonstrable negative effect on any objecting neighbor, that the application is a reasonable one and should be granted. So we offer that for you. We did also have some comments to Ms. Riley's letter in the letter that you've just received. So I don't know how you, particularly given what you have in front of you this evening, if you'd rather digest the back and forth between Ms. Riley's office and mine. My guess would be that Ms. Riley's going to want a chance to respond to my response to the letter. I do want to highlight a couple of things, though. It's sort of the first time I've seen a neighbor object to a revegetation plan. Usually those things are seen as a good thing. There's some, as Steve Naroda will tell you if you wish, there are some invasive species to the north of the Squabble Lane. And our attempt, as with every time we come in with an application to add to a single-family residence, was to provide mitigation by way of a landscape plan. So it's rather unusual, particularly in light of the fact that Ms. Riley's clients, as we submitted earlier, does have a very significant landscape plan along the pond that was requested and granted. It would be, it's strange to have a neighbor object to a landscaping plan, the whole purpose of which is to try to mitigate any impact on the regulated wetlands. So that was strange, but I'll leave that in your hands, actually. Then there was a question that Ms. Riley had about the proposed dock in Wickapog Pond. I'm not aware, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, this would require permits from the Department of Environmental Conservation, perhaps from the Army Corps of Engineers. If Wickapog Pond is deemed to be a navigable waterway, don't laugh. There have been, essentially duck ponds in the middle of Nebraska that have been viewed to be navigable waters under the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Department of State. I'm not aware that the village, I've never seen a village wetlands permit for a dock. So we would also need a trustee permit because Wickapog Pond is owned by the trustees, or the trustees of the town. commonalty, so. And then just a few other points. Ms. Riley notes that she's concerned about construction within the public right-of-way. If you look at our DM2, which is the demobilization plan 2, you'll see that there is no proposed construction. The construction interest will not extend into the public right-of-way. So I think, unless you have some questions.
John, I would like you to just remind us of what relief specifically you're requesting and how that may have been modified by your revised plan that you just submitted.
The relief requested would not be modified at all, the zoning relief, because we still need help from the 80-foot setback. But we did, nevertheless, reduce the length of the porch.
So it's
Because
still a portion of that is at 73.9?
Yeah, because the portion where it got closest was, it didn't become any less conforming, although it's a very slight nonconformance. But, so we would still need the relief, Wayne, but the porch got 20 feet shorter.
Does it still need relief?
Yeah, it still needs relief because the portion, even though we reduced it, the portion where it impacts would still exist.
So it was reduced from what to what? The 20 feet is from?
From where, from the east
So you
side?
can see it, Mark, you can see it on the,
That's what I'm looking
it's
for.
about 20 feet from east to west, away from the neighbors to the east.
If you look at the survey.
So we thought that if we're going to reduce it, we would take
Plans
it.
that the only access to this second porch is from the master bedroom, correct?
Yes. Is that correct? Where's Jim? Yeah. Jim, the board had a question as to what the access is for the second-story porch.
From what I could see, it looked like it was just the master bedroom, master bathroom.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
it.
That's
No
it.
other
Just state-
bedrooms, no other
John.
Not a
places, so it's
communal
really,
area or anything. just
that's
the-
like for the use of,
State your name, please.
Sure. Jim McMullen from Fleetwood and McMullen.
Thank you.
Yes, that's just from the master and the master bathroom.
So previously, John, that deck and both the porch and the second floor deck, so to speak, was extending all the way to the easterly end of the house, right, the dwelling?
All the way to the east of the house, and that was the primary change in the Squires and Holden plan. You'll see that if you compare the two surveys, it's 20 feet, we took 20 feet, the easterly 20 feet off of this, off.
So
And again,
now, before it was in front of the library, right? And it's no longer in front of the library, just the
just the master.
master bedroom.
And again, why did we take it from the east? Well, architecturally it made more sense, but also since the concerned neighbor whose house is to the east, we move it to the east, it makes it even more so that the primary view shed from that deck, even if you were to look over the tennis court, but the primary view shed is to the north, northwest, over the pond. It's obvious why someone wants that view. It's a nice part of the aspect of the house. Not only do you have the wonderful ocean views, but you have the view to Winnipeg Pond. So, and again, I don't know how that really affects someone 350 feet and to the east away, but we did remove 20 feet of it.
Is it to the east or the northeast?
The objectives house is to the northeast, but the house itself is fairly far to the east and also to the north and across the street. And again, there's a tennis court in between the house, the objectives house, and the applicant's house.
Is there a new elevation?
Yep, it's right here.
That's the new elevation?
Yeah.
And that's in the packet?
Yep, it's all in the packet. So again, I don't know, Chick, unfortunately,
It was just submitted.
scheduling just submitted, so,
Yeah,
you know.
I wanted to ask
I wanted to have time to look
I
at
saw the
that.
date on the EAF was yesterday, so really it was just submitted.
Just submitted.
John, could you just, a couple of quick things. The comparison table, I didn't see where that ended up on the plans, and I just received these tonight.
It's on the,
Sir, please announce yourself.
Excuse me, Glenn?
I would
M1.
like him to announce himself.
Steve, just say your
Steve
name.
Neroli with Aris Design. The comparison table is on the M1 sheet.
And Steve, could you just explain the dune restoration part of this? I see a hatched area on Plan PP-1, and unless I'm missing it, I didn't see much detail in terms of what's proposed.
It's part of a different application, Chick.
Oh, is that
This is not part of
previously?
this application. This is
Okay, it says
previously
proposed, so I just, okay.
That was, the revegetation was undertaken last year.
Yep.
The vegetation was removed and was replanted recently. I have an image of it.
Okay.
Dune area, so we can.
No, it still said proposed, so I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's a different application, but at the time, it was proposed. Yeah.
No other questions?
Any further questions for Mr. Bennett from the board? From the room, anyone like to speak?
Linda Riley, 235 Hampton Road, for Mr. and Mrs. Gelfond, who are the neighbors across the street. I won't take too much of your time tonight if you are going to adjourn it. I was just handed these things this evening, as you know, and I would like to review them with my client. I'll save most of my remarks until I've had a chance to thoroughly review it. I just want to say a couple of things, which is part of our problem with the revegetation plan along the wetlands is, number one, it's calling for silt fencing right on the edge of the wetlands during the whole construction process. And it seems to me it ought to be moved back from the edge of the wetlands. That it's calling for basically grasses for the most part in there. And although a glance at their letter that they did today represents that they're not going to mow it, it looks to me like to be the kind of vegetation that's going to be easily mowed, and often landscapers accidentally mow these areas, and it would be much better protected if there were some woody vegetation, indigenous vegetation, maybe along the edge, like bayberry or something. We also object to the path that's shown on there because, as you know, we strongly object to the dock, and this is a path that is designed purely for access to the dock. And although Mr. Bennett says revegetation is a good thing, and often it is, this is, I think actually that dune side area was bulldozed almost 2 years ago and torn up almost 2 years ago. And it's news to me that it's been replanted. If so, it's just recently. It's been bare for quite a long period of time. You can see it on the aerials. And lastly, I just want to mention that the construction protocol is really, really important to my clients. I haven't had a chance to look at the amendments, but the old plan definitely showed a contracting entrance that spilled out onto Squabble Lane or outside of their property boundaries. It showed parking space for a couple of contractors' cars, but also, very importantly, there's nothing in there that really indicates how the heavy equipment's going to move around on this lot. It's a very environmentally sensitive lot, and there is construction planned on all four sides of it, all the way around, including tennis court, including the pool, which is being completely replaced. And there ought to be some kind of, right now they're showing a silt fence that's right up against the proposed, and hay bales right up against the proposed septic tank, and it just seems physically impossible to me that clearly there's going to have to be some heavy construction vehicles within the 100-foot dune setback, and there ought to be some access shown for where they're going to be limited to and how they're going to move around a lot. So I just want you to think about that. But I'll hold most of my comments if you think you're going to adjourn it so that I can review these with my client. We're trying to be reasonable. I mean, and just, I mean, we're not objecting to every single thing. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, which was part of Chick's short memo that he submitted last time, and that's about the noise. The plans call for pilings under the pool, which everybody knows what pile drivers sound like, and it's likely to be very disturbing. And maybe we could have some limitations on when that kind of noisy work is done, that kind of work, particularly in light of the fact that this whole neighborhood suffered during Labor Day weekend with jackhammering the whole weekend long. Okay, thank you. Will you be adjourning it?
We'll see. We
We'll
have to
see.
vote on it.
Thinking about it.
All right, well.
Odds are good.
A couple things in response, if we may.
Yes, you may.
Steve Marotta is going to talk about the fact that there is quite a bit of woody vegetation or vegetation up in the grasses in the plan, number one. If Linda has some, Ms. Riley has some things that she'd like us to include in the construction methodology, if they're reasonable, if she can get them to me quickly, maybe we can do that. So that's not an issue. Silt fencing, again, is typical, and that's to control any sort of movement of soils during the construction. But I'll have Steve show you that it's not just grasses down there. There's some other vegetation.
Just quickly, on the revegetation portion along the wetland, we do have a mixture. There are grasses, there are perennials, a mixture of woody material as well, too. We have native roses and bayberry mixed within the plant material. So it's appropriate for the setting and it's appropriate for this type of undertaking.
Bless you.
Steve, I know the notes on the plan also refer to retaining existing native vegetation in that area?
Yes.
So you're not going to be removing anything other than invasive?
Just only non-native plant species would be removed. And this whole portion along the river, pond edge is to remain.
You have an application for a dock now that you don't have yet?
We have the application. It's part of this application.
Yeah, but that's with the trustee.
Just for the path right now, yeah. Just for the path right now.
You can consult with your counsel, but my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that would be the only thing that would we.
So if you don't get the dock, you'd use the path to access the pond
Yes.
for canoeing or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just want to finish that, if I can. My understanding is the dock, would require, it's a trustee bottom, so we need a permit. Trustees are the commonly and freeholders, and the village trustee, we need a permit from them. We need a DEC permit because it's either a freshwater and or a formerly connected tidal wetland, and probably from the Secretary of State, maybe from the Army Corps. But we'd have to obtain those.
Is there anything can be done about the noise and the time of year you?
Well, there are. I'm hesitant because there are the village code deals with that. It has limits of when you can construct and timing, and usually that's where you leave it. The Southampton Village Code has exemptions for noise based upon construction. And those time periods they're a little bit tighter than the town. You can't start until 8, I think. The town is 7, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's Sundays. You can't work on Sundays.
No work on Sundays.
Yeah.
There is a special, Wayne's got it open now, but there's a section in the code that just deals with pile driving.
Pile driving, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays.
Every house built in there, including the
If they're just doing
neighbor's house.
grazings under the pool, it's a couple day,
The thing about noise.
They're gonna be
is
in and out of
You can't
there.
build a house without noise.
quick, so.
Every house in there was
So
built with
we'll
noise.
obviously have to comply with that. I guess there's no pile driving on weekends, which seems fairly reasonable, I guess,
And holidays.
and holidays. So we don't have to worry about Labor Day.
Yes.
But no, we'll certainly comply
I'd
with
be
that.
concerned now with Christmas.
Distant
You
memory.
don't pile drive on, it's Christmas.
That, now you're doing religious freedom.
Thank you for that. That was somewhere in the cobwebs of my mind, the special pile driving thing, which makes sense.
Right. Any further comments from the room? We have a motion to adjourn for all purposes, I suppose.
So moved. Second?
In favor?
Aye.
And aye. Okay. Next case is number 3015, Nakmani. For the applicant.
Good evening, members of the board. Brian DeSessa, 2462 Main Street, Suite 7, Bridgehampton, New York, attorney for the applicant. Good evening, members of the board. So we were here last month. I know we were waiting on Mr. Voorhees' comments. We did receive those. We responded to his comments with an additional submission to the board, which separated out the survey. In your packet, you see a comparison as to where the existing house is as to where the proposed house is to be sited. It's 26 feet landward of where the existing house is. So you can see this is the existing house, and the proposed house then slides back into that area. It conforms to, there's a chart in there that's showing that it conforms to the best extent possible to the recommendations in the Meadow Lane Overlay District. There's a new innovative septic system that's proposed with the plan, and it maintains the maximum distance. In viewing the survey, the property is heavily burdened by wetlands, which cut into both the water side and then come across the, if you see here, as to the street side. One of the variances being 74.1 for the septic system. That's the farthest we could push the septic system to the side of the property. This is the 74.1 that's indicated on there, and this is the edge of wetland as delineated by Mr. Voorhees. So it's the farthest we could do it. It is one of the new systems that use geotextile sand filters, so no retaining wall is necessary based on the test holes that were done there. That's noted on the survey, and that's been confirmed by Ed Armis and the engineers who designed that. An application is pending before the Suffolk County Department of Health. I know there were some questions last time on that with respect to the need to not put a wall in, and I've triple checked it, and that is the situation as it's proposed on the plan there. We were in front of the Architectural Review Board on Monday, who looked favorably on the project, and they're indicated that they granted approval on it. One of the questions that they'd come up with which was respect to the rooftop and activity up there. I don't know if this board reviewed some of that. It's a LEED certified house, that's the proposal here. So on the roof, if you look at the packages that you have, age, 6 is the red line outline as to what's going up there. I did bring some additional blow-ups from the architect with respect to that. Solar panels are proposed up there. They're hidden solar panels as to access, so and I can hand in a couple packets so the board can see those in the smaller
So
versions.
those are going to be going in the solar panel?
Yes, that's part of the application, and that was what we represented to the Architectural Review Board, being certified. That was,
Now, this, what you're submitting is now showing the solar panels?
there was a note on the previous plan, Wayne.
Right.
But we just made it more clear, the note in the middle there. So
You're submitting a plan showing the solar
Yeah,
panels?
it just said proposal. We drew them on there so that there was no confusion as to what was.
The dark lines in the back corner, what do they represent?
Where?
The roof, the dark.
This corner?
Yes.
This is the access to get up there.
And how does that work? Is it a set of stairs or is it a ladder
It's a set of internal stairs.
with a doorway that opens up?
There's light, so the staircase is glass from the ground up, so light penetrates down from the roof through both the first and second floor. If you look through the plans, everything in that area is basically glass, so the light would come down all the way is the current proposal.
So the use of the roof is simply for panels?
That's correct.
Well, why do you need a staircase?
Because they use that as a bulkhead to get light to come down, instead of doing a skylight, because they want light to come from the roof all the way through. So having a 4-panel glass serves two purposes. It serves the purpose of accessing the roof for solar panels and bringing in more light. So you're able to generate, according to the architect, more light through the house with that design.
How much room on the roof is in excess of the panel area?
If you look at the recent plans, there is not much. I can give you an exact square footage. It's a few feet. The panels cover most of it because they're flat, so that they're not visible from neighboring sides.
And you're putting a glass railing wall around the solar panel?
Mr. Florio spoke with the building department about it, and so there was a safety concern as to having panels up there, so the glass gives the facade as a aesthetic design versus a solid parapet wall up there. The condition,
So you're saying the building department requires?
In the conversation, with Mr. Florio I did not have it, Val had with the building department, they wanted safety railing around there, and instead of having a solid parapet wall, which would increase the aesthetic view of massing there, the design was for a glass wall. The applicant would agree to a condition. There's no living space proposed up there, so if the board were to be in favor of the application, we would agree to a condition that there wouldn't be living space. I mean, we're not looking to use it as living or entertaining space. It's strictly a functional of both the architectural style and placement of the solar panels.
The glass goes around the solar panels for safety reasons.
That's it.
Well, how about where you can fall off the roof? Why is that not? Is that
You couldn't get past it acts as a parapet. So when you come out onto the roof where the solar panels are, that's connected all the way around. So there's no way to, unless you're jumping over the glass.
So it's a glass railing enclosed.
It's a railing. It's the same as if you were to be on a balcony. You would require to have a railing.
Yeah, it's a roof with solar panels on it, though, so
Get 19. There you can see.
Yeah, so what's the purpose of it?
The purpose, I don't know what the purpose is.
It was a safety conversation that Mr. Florio had with the building department.
The safety is falling off the roof.
So you have solar
not-
panels and angled roof all over?
I wasn't part of the conversation.
These are angled roofs.
Aesthetically,
This is a flat roof.
These are flat.
Supposedly somebody has to go up there for maintenance.
Yes, they
You gotta
do,
go up on a
but
pitch roof for maintenance.
Well, then you're using some ladders. See, there's not going to be any ladders up
So,
there.
Staircase.
I don't see this, I don't know why they want.
I mean, no relief is requested. It was an aesthetic perspective. The Architectural Review Board was okay with it. It's not a dimensional relief as or one of the variances. It was a style design. So.
board is concerned with it, that there's going to be like a deck up there, and people are going to be having entertainment. You already stated that they're not.
And we would agree to a condition if the board were inclined
But
to
you
go
have a
forward.
set of stairs and you got a glass railing, so it's sort of looking like a duck, you know?
No, I don't disagree with that. That's why we offered the condition on there, because then it becomes an enforcement issue if someone were to not. Also, this would travel with the building department, and for purpose of C of O, if the solar panels weren't up there, there would be an issue. There wouldn't be a C of O to be issued.
Yeah, we were.
Sorry, I only had
Can you show us the compliance with the pyramid law? I just didn't see the diagram. It may be in there.
Yeah.
Put that up.
Yep, it is on page. If you look at page 7 of the previously submitted packet, you have your line across the front. Showing the dimensions, but the house is proposed at 59.1 feet from the street.
This page?
The red line was the...
Yeah, so what's the angle on that?
That was we revised it from the last time. It went flatter.
This is from the front street, from Meadow Lane.
Correct.
What about from the side yards?
From the side yards, it does, I don't know if he put it on there, but he did check that and speak with Tim in the building department. We maintain 40, and 20. So I can have those added to the
Yeah,
list.
just the pyramid
Yeah.
law lines. Okay.
No problem. We've confirmed it, so I can have those added in the submission of the side yards.
Construction methodology did we get on this?
We didn't get it, did we?
Chick, do we have construction methodology in the package? You know, parking, dumpsters, equipment?
We did add it.
There's a construction protocol.
It was in the submission.
Section
Yep.
C of the submission. It's a little bound book.
Okay.
It's in the proposed driveway area. We're keeping a lot of the existing vegetation, and there was a revegetation plan that was submitted as well. If you look at this diagram, shows that this was the area of where the new driveway is adjacent to the septic. This area is all naturally vegetated, and this would be the area that would be for construction, staging, and anything else needed. That was also identified on the surveys.
Any other questions from the board? No. From the room? So you have things to submit, is that right?
I believe it's just the pyramid from the side yards. You wanted to add that added to the diagram, correct?
Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, we had, at the last meeting, asked for a couple of things, and those are included in this package that I referred to. One of the items was a table, a request for a table to compare coverages, setbacks, things like that. So that's provided as Exhibit 3. But I would like to see a little more detailed breakdown of the setbacks to the various components on the site. You'll note that it's a pretty small house, but the decks extend farther to the north, closer to the wetlands. But Brian, if you could just break that down a little bit more and do the setback to the building, the deck, and the pool.
That is on the survey. Those are the Nelson and Pope survey. If you want them in the chart, they were added to the survey.
To the chart.
Okay.
And the survey is the Squire
Yes.
Holden?
Correct.
Yeah, so, and that's helpful because it has the red outline of what's there now.
Correct. That's what was
But
asked for last time.
It looks like there's an area to the west where the pool and the proposed deck is extending closer to the wetlands than the existing structure. And there may be a way to either balance that out.
The wetlands, the issue is when you come toward the street, the wetlands cut into the property. So as we pull the house toward the street to come away from the wetlands, the envelope becomes smaller because the wetlands cut into the front of the property.
Yeah, no, my thought was that maybe the pool could slide east a little bit within that deck area, just so that it's not closer than the existing structure. And I do want to point out to the board that the property doesn't have a pool at present. There are other pools on Meadow Lane, and there's some noted in the chart.
Correct.
But this property does not have one. So I think, we want to look carefully at the pool. But that was my only additional thought. It really kind of jumped out when you can see that overlay of the red outline of the existing. And then, as I said, a request for breaking down the setbacks to existing structure, decking, driveway, and community.
What pool?
We can do that.
What pool are you referring to?
Swimming pool.
There's a proposed
Pool, okay.
small pool within the deck.
within the
It
deck.
shows up well in the architectural renderings also.
The blue area?
That would be it. We can explore sliding that east.
No retaining wall, right?
No retaining wall. Triple confirmed, no retaining wall.
Finish it?
Yeah, I am.
Further comments from the room? You get a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
Favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. It's December 20th? 20th, right?
Work session is the 11th.
We got it. Very good.
Yes,
Fine.
before the-
We got it.
Okay. No. Number 3016, Amodea.
The applicant, Bennett, the project architect, CMX Sammy, is with me also, as is Bailey Larkin, and my client is here as well. So this is a request to add space to a pre-existing non-conforming situation. And I think, I don't think, and I don't want to be presumptuous, but I don't think that the addition of the space was not the issue. The board has seen and granted many of these in the past. I think the board was concerned about the parking, and I think what we've done is listen very intently to the board's concerns, and I think we've come up with a parking plan, or Mr. Sammy has come up with a parking plan that meets the concerns. It's probably the best to compare the prior plan that the board had some concerns with the new proposed plan, which accomplishes a few things. It makes the parking area more expansive, and also what it also allows, and I think this was Wayne's concern, it makes a lot of sense, it allows you to back out and then drive out so that the cars are driving out, with the face towards Meeting House Lane. So I think that does a lot. Although there's an enlargement, there are no addition of any bedrooms, so we humbly suggest that we're grandfathered in terms of the parking. We don't need relief for the extra 2 spaces, but we'll leave that in your good judgment. So that's, and the other thing to note, there was some talk about a wastewater system. We did confirm with the former building inspector, John Foster, that since there would be no additional bedrooms, even though it's an addition, there would be no need for any new wastewater system. The other thing is here's the old plan, we did take out the pool. I'm not suggesting that we would never put a pool in there, but if the applicant were to decide to come back in and put a pool in a conforming location, it would no doubt, in my opinion, because of where the pool would be located, you have to have a 20-foot separation between a pool and a septic system. At that time, would probably require a new septic system. But so what we did is we took the pool off of the plan. I'm not saying that the applicant may not decide to do that in the future, but if he does, because of the difficulty or impossibility of getting the required separation between the existing septic system and the pool, you're probably looking at that point at a new wastewater system, most likely in the front. But again, to make sure there was no confusion about that, we took the pool off. The pool didn't require any relief, but since the issue on the wastewater system came up, we wanted to take that out. Again, Mr. Foster confirmed that since there was no additional bedrooms, that the existing septic system could be used, and we hopefully, we've taken care of the concerns about parking by going into this, what I will say is a much more sensible plan for parking from the back than we had previously proposed.
Parking looks much improved.
Yeah. Yeah, it also...
I only have one question. It says you're putting in pool equipment. Are you doing that for the future?
Excuse me?
You're putting in pool equipment.
No, that's just a, that is a,
pool.
that was, somebody didn't click remove at Squires and Holden, so we'll just take that out.
Okay. But the parking looks much improved.
Yeah.
If you all agree.
I mean, you could, we'll either get you a revised survey, or you could condition any grant upon taking that survey, that pool equipment out for now.
Well, I guess you could put it in if you want. Sit within the limits. Maybe it's cheaper.
Might be cheaper. Price of pool equipment going up. Buy it now. But anyway, I think we've mitigated any concerns that the board had. But you'll tell me.
Any further questions from the board?
I'm good.
John,
It's all about the
Attorney?
parking. He's taking care of it.
my only question is, what's the setback of the easterly parking space? It's not noted there.
Easterly parking space. If parking
number
spaces
6.
are 10 feet,
This is approximately 8 feet. I don't have the exact dimension.
yeah, that's
but
about,
it's
about
more than
8 feet.
It should be 10 feet.
Should be
so-
10 feet, well,
so
we'll make it 10.
just make sure it's 10.
We'll make sure it's 10.
Any further questions from the board? From the room? Okay, what do we want to do?
I think that if Mr. Bennett can just, if he wants to revise the survey and show the setback as well as taking out your pool equipment, and you get that by the 11th, we can have a decision by the next meeting.
They've always been decision, right?
A motion to close the decision pending application.
I move we close the decision. Second.
Favor?
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Not bad.
Time to eat.
Wouldn't fit in the other bag. Can't have it wrong.
New case is 3012 Danielson, 30 Sanford Place.
You have a packet on this, right?
We do. Do we have notifications? I'd say we don't know. What's this? Just to get supposed to have returns.
Have a little thing, yeah.
Do you have returns from the certified mail?
I got 4.
Yeah, we should probably have those too.
You want those? Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, for the applicant, your name, sir?
John Danielson.
Okay, you may proceed.
Well, as I'm seeking a variance on the parking. The tenant downstairs, is it acupuncturist? And the requirement seems to be that I need 8 parking spaces for that. But there is never any need for that many parking spaces. The acupuncturist has one client at a time, perhaps one in the back. I don't have a car, and almost all of my friends and people arrive by jitney or train and taxi or walking. So that's the only time that there are cars that would interact with the acupuncturist.
So your application asks for 3 parking spaces, and on the survey, you have 4.
Well, the 4 is the week, would be a weekend.
But it is.
I don't know why he included it that way. Squires Holden did it that way. But the acupuncturist is Monday through Friday, and my guests are Saturday, Sunday. I don't live out here. I come out on the weekends.
That's that acupuncturist that's in there now.
Pardon me?
She leaves in some other
Well, in that case, I would
office space goes in there.
I would come back to you, and we would discuss what that's about. The reason I like to have somebody like that down there is if I put a family with 2 kids there, they're here on the weekends and they want the deck and the backyard. This type of thing doesn't require that.
So, Mr. Danielson, what is the existing use of the premises? Do you have a CO? Certificate of occupancy?
I don't for the acupuncturist.
No, we understand that. You're proposing that, but what's existing today?
The acupuncturist is there today, and I have the apartment upstairs. He was there when Joshua's place is there, and he's still there.
Can you provide us with a copy of the CO, please?
Pardon me?
Can you get the copy of the CO for us to see, please?
Okay, I don't, what do you mean?
Well, if it says that it's a one-family home.
It's a 2-family home.
Oh, it's a 2-family home.
It's a 2-family. It's an apartment upstairs and an apartment downstairs.
To a one-family home with an office.
The CO will show that.
I don't have one, I'll be honest.
You can get one.
Right,
Go to the building department, you can get
one. Okay, fine.
So right now, there's a 2-family dwelling.
Right.
And you're proposing this office use on the first floor.
Correct.
And have you been to the planning board at all?
I've submitted everything to the planning board up to this point. I understand the parking.
This is the zoning board. This is the zoning board, but have you submitted anything to the planning board?
Oh, yes, I have everything.
And did you have a meeting and they gave you any input on the layout and the design of the parking and the access?
No, they said that's where I had to come to you.
Okey-doke.
I think we sort of need to see the CO first. The heck if we are.
Okay. The board would like to see the C of O.
Okay, and I get that from where?
Building
You
department.
have to go to the building department.
Okay, all right.
That would show us something of the history of the building and all that.
Okay, that's fine.
This is Joshua's place formerly?
That's where Joshua's place was, illegally, to be totally honest.
Okay.
They were only there for 19 years, so that's...
Well, things move slow sometimes on the shore here.
We didn't know anything about it. We had the opportunity to put them in there. It sounded like a good deal, and anyhow, they were there, and they're out of there now, so...
You need to get a copy of the CO.
Okay, I'll get one, sure.
And what is in the barn?
The barn, what's in the...
Yard equipment, that's it. I mean, it's just stuff. It's not used as a garage. There's a loft above. There's nothing in it. So it's just yard equipment, that sort of thing. Fertilizer, topsoil, whatever. It's not used for any special purpose.
Have you and your architect consulted the building department about the conversion of what was a dwelling to commercial space?
No.
There may be building code issues, fire code issues, changing it to commercial. You should be aware of that. There's nothing much to do here, but you should be aware of that. And also the health department, are you proposing to change your septic?
Yes, that's part of what I need to do.
And why is it proposed to be located under the driveway?
I'm not certain about that. Squire Holden did it, and that's where he put it.
You may want to look at that and relocate it outside of the driveway. It makes it easier for the health
That's
department.
sort of where I was, but that's where they went with it.
Okay, anything else that we might recommend for the gentleman?
What does black checked area on this indicate?
That would be, because there's supposed to be a ramp for handicap, and that's where that would be located. And that, so if there were a person for that, they would park there.
Because this shows 8 spots.
So there is a letter, I don't know, this was with your application. It says request for variance, and there was a picture of an alternative plan.
Yes.
With the turnaround in the front. And you're just showing that as an illustration of what was not desired, correct?
Correct.
What does this one say?
Do you have a floor plan of the existing building?
I do.
It might be helpful to look at that.
I've
so we-
submitted that, to the other group, but I'll be glad to get you one as well.
Yeah, it would be very helpful
Sure.
because I'm assuming that 100% of the space on the first floor is going to be totally devoted to the office use. Might be storage areas, things of that sort.
Well, it's 2 bedrooms, 2 baths down there, and a kitchen, and a large main area. But the acupuncturist uses the 2 rooms. But he has 1 patient at a time.
Right, so it would be good to get a floor plan.
Okay.
It might be good to have
Okay,
your...
I've submitted it, but I'll get it for you, sure.
You might be good to have your tenant explain his proposed operation so we understand
Okay.
that, because as the board members have indicated, that may be acceptable for that type of office use, but a change in the future to a different office use might generate more
Right.
parking concerns. The board might have a concern.
Right. Well, like I say, if I were to change it or to sell it, that would, but I plan to do nothing.
Also, if it was an apartment, and now it's an office, but there were rooms down there, and it's in the basement, there might be egress issues. In other words, you might need to have other egress rather than just one doorway in and out.
Well, there's a front door and a back door. There's a downstairs, there's a door in the driveway that goes into the basement.
It should show.
As well as...
Show all the egress.
Okay.
But can you clarify for us, we're looking at possibly 2 surveys. One survey shows 8 parking spots.
What?
That's what we don't want. That's what I'm asking to be, that's why I'm here.
Okay, so you submitted a survey with what we don't want.
The Squire Holden
That
did what
complies to the amount of spaces.
that's what they're saying normally would be the requirement.
This is what you could have, and then I see. Okay.
But that would take up,
The backyard.
6 part, the whole backyard, right?
The difficulty is if we grant this for 3 spaces, that variance stays with the property
Right.
forever. Even if you sell the property and somebody else comes in with a brand new tenant, we're stuck with
Well,
the 3
I
spaces.
would think that would be, somebody would have to come back and get it
Doesn't
back to
usually
what...
work that way.
Doesn't sometimes work that way. They figure they've got the 3, that's it, they don't need to come back. Unless we wrote the decision and we specified.
That's what I would hope you would do. Because, if that changed down there, I'm open to some other situation. I could put family down there, but like I say, my purpose in owning the place out here is to come out on weekends and have the deck and the backyard and have guests out here. And so I don't have a car, I don't own a car, so I don't need parking, and I only think of 3 guests that ever come out with a car, and they're here on the weekend.
Yep, millennials are not getting cars anymore.
That's right. Well, if you live in the city, you walk all the time, and people look at me out here because I walk everywhere, but that's what I do.
I figure you lost your license for some reason.
You put in these walk lights around here, most of them don't work, and it's,
Right.
my friend that's there a lot, we decided the one there on Prospect Street was done for us so we could get over to Fowler's or to Lynch's. And that's not working now, just to let you know. So I'll get you what you want, the CO
Okay.
and a floor plan.
And perhaps relocating the septic.
Okay, I'll talk to Square
Right.
Holden about that.
Anything else from the board? Anything from the room? All righty.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn for all purposes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
this one, Gil has 5 in a row.
I don't have enough recusal forms. Wait a minute. Hold it up.
Do you have enough forms in them?
I hope so. I had no idea.
You just do one form and just all the cases?
Look at this. This guy's on the ball or what?
They saw me coming.
Anybody else recusing?
I will later.
Not yet. All right. Next case, 2959 Teacups.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Chuck Bowman, Land Use Ecological Services for 71 Teacups. This is really a modification of a approval that you issued in your decision in 2017 in September. I have to owe the board an apology. That included a wetland restoration plan that included significant invasive species removal, but also to maintain some of the native vegetation that was in. If you will recall, there was a sedimentation basin that we were going to be cleaning out. We're going to be doing some revegetation and installing a buffer along Lake Agawam. We stopped down there with the contractor. I actually had 3 meetings with the contractor, who, not just his workers, but with the contractor, told him exactly how to remove the invasive species by hand. Had another meeting, told him to do it by hand. Came down the 3rd time, and he had taken his Bobcat and completely cleared the whole restoration area. And at that point in time, and in my 30-some-odd years, I lost my temper, kicked him off the job, called the owners, sent a letter to Chick and to Wayne, and said, I couldn't believe it. I, ran one up one side of them, down the other, because it makes us all look like idiots. And to say that I was angry was an understatement. Moving forward, we took the restoration plan that you had approved, recalculated the disturbed areas that he had worked in with the Bobcat, added the same plant species and mixtures that we already had on the plan, just expanded it by 3,600 square feet, if that's the violation area, I guess you'd call it, so that the same buffer area remains the same. And are prepared to get this done and done hopefully correctly in the spring. The owners, the Zarofskis, have certainly offered their apologies to the board. They weren't there, and it should never have happened. So no excuses. It just should never have happened. So you have the plan in front of you, and again, all we did was expand the area. Nothing to do with the pool. If you remember, it was all because of a relocation of the pool, retaining walls. That's all the same. This really has to do just with the revegetation.
Chick, you have comments?
Yeah, Chuck did call me up. He was quite upset. But, since you're back,
unfortunately.
And since they did bad things, I'm just wondering, this area, I will tell you, it was not at all high-quality vegetation prior to this disturbance. The restoration plan was definitely going to improve it. The board members will probably remember this is the area where there was a pipe coming in from South Main and discharging in this area, but it does get out to Lake Agawam. And so I'm looking at these beautiful green areas on this plan and wondering if there's a way to cut back on them, either turn them into no-mow areas or less maintained. It's saying it's lawn, sod.
Well, it always was on the original plan. It was lawn.
I know.
And now it was dirt. Right. And I know the Zarofskis, they have little kids.
And that's within. It looks like the limit of clearing is this blue line, so that is part of that cleared area.
Yeah, right.
But since it's right next to wetland areas that do discharge or certainly are connected to Lake Agawam, would it be possible to come up with some other species other than lawn
Well,
so that we don't get the fertilization in that
And this is
area?
my question. We did specify a eco-grass, non-fertilization grass seed mixture. But as we know, that doesn't mean that it doesn't get fertilized, especially in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
I certainly can do that. I can certainly ask the Zarowskis. They were just concerned about having some sort of access along the restoration area, from the front to the back. And the kids, apparently, that's where the eastern section of the green is where they stored like kayaks and their canoes and kids' toys and things like that. So, I mean, that was the whole reason for it. It was grass before, so, nothing has really changed. I can certainly look at putting in a different grass mixture or something that might just be mowed twice a year or something like that.
I would much prefer that if it's possible.
Okay.
If the board's in agreement. We look to try and, reduce those fertilized areas as much as we can.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing. And again, I shouldn't even be back before you all. So, it is something that...
Same thing.
Hold on, but what does he need to do?
This is the restored area that was on the original.
So if we could leave, I will certainly go back to the Zarowskis and ask them and see if we can come up with something else to do that.
We're talking about both of the green areas,
Yeah,
because they're adjacent, even if it's a narrow strip or something.
We should have made them a different color, I guess.
Well, it kind of does jump out at you.
What occurs back in that southeast corner?
What occurs?
Yeah, what do they need lawn in that area for? I understand the access around the retaining
Well, like
wall.
I'm saying, right now, that's where they store kids, the bicycles and kayaks and,
That south.
Yeah, I mean,
corner?
yes, in the south.
It's off the driveway area.
It's right off the driveway area, and it's always been a lawn area there. And it's flat. It's one of the few flat areas, because as you leave that southeast corner, you descend into that sedimentation basin and swale.
Okay, that was all. I think we understand what happened, not...
Who's the contractor, by the way?
I'll get you his name.
Could you put that in the record, just so we have an understanding?
And, no, I supervised lots of projects for 35 years all over Long Island, these kind of things, and there's been a few times where, because I actually sat there and talked to him face to face and took him in, showed him how to do it, and then he just come out when it's all cleared, it's done, So, well, it was really tough. It was tough. There's things that stuck their workers, and the briars, they welcome, right, chick, welcome to our world, you get stuck with briars and poison ivy and all sorts of good stuff,
Anything further from the board? Any questions from the room? What should we do? We don't require anything.
I would adjourn for all purposes, so Mr. Bowman can get the information, a response to Chick. If he gets it here probably by the work session, I'm sure Chick could probably have a permit ready for the next meeting.
Doubt if there'll be any planting before the spring, but...
No, there won't be.
Certainly like to get it...
Yeah. And the next work
Resolved
session
and finished.
is on, you said the 11th? I think?
The work session is the 11th, and the meeting is the 20th.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
A second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And,
Thank you.
where's my repeater?
That might be 40, but
You're under.
could be 40. I lose track.
Number 3017, Dwight Yellem, trustee for J. Ehrlich.
You have 3017 there?
3017, there he is.
Do you have it, Tony?
I don't have it.
No, it's just a pool cover.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure it out. That's the automatic pool cover.
Couldn't figure out why you need a variance. Because it's within the wetlands.
It's a little dark at the
Really,
Bill, you've taken too long.
Covers I've seen are actually go right in the coping.
Bill, you don't have to delay any further.
They might have to do it.
Pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. For the applicant Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton.
A little bit of construction.
We have more than one case on the agenda tonight, so I'll try to be as quick as I can with those that I do have. This one hopefully will be the quickest. Now, this is an application to construct an automatic pool cover adjacent to the existing swimming pool, and we need a wetland special permit because the proposal would be 131 feet from the wetlands boundary. This is a safety requirement. You may recall, and I submitted with the application, there was a previous wetlands permit for this property which established a buffer along the lake, which has been fastidiously maintained for the last X number of years since it's been installed. If you need it, I have a letter from the people who've maintained it, but I hope I don't have to say too much more about this application.
Explain how it works, the pool cover.
It's got a motor on it. I guess it does its job. It keeps the heat in. It's a safety feature.
And
Is this the
explains how
kind
it
that floats on the
sits.
surface of the water, or is it the kind that's up on the...
I think it goes across. It's got a motorized thing at the end of it.
But it just floats on the top of the
I believe
surface.
so, yeah.
There's complaints from the previous.
I think it amounts to a total of 72 square feet. The thing on the end is you can do it this way. But there it is there. It's microscopic.
Oh, that's it.
That's it right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I don't really have anything else to add unless you have any questions.
Is there a patio around that pool now?
No, not right. There's just pretty much grass. As you can see, there's a very small
So they really
coping
have, they
around.
don't have to break cement or anything to install this?
No, I've been out there, and it's hard, just a little coping around the edge of it. I can give you, if you want it, there's an aerial photograph of a Google Earth picture which shows exactly what's around it. I can hand that up to you. In case you wanted it, I brought a copy of the approved buffer plan, but unless you need it, I'm told it's as good as it was when it was installed, so. Yeah, behind that, there are pictures that show the buffer itself and how it's doing.
Why was that buffer, Joe?
Very seldom you'll see me have that few notes on a piece of paper, so I hope this will be it.
Is this the first house on that driveway or the second house? One's 218, one's 208.
Yeah, this is 218, so this is all the way down. And you may remember there were other variances we had when there was a building that was destroyed by fire and all of that. But this is the only case that needed a wetlands special permit.
Questions from the board? Chick?
No questions.
From the room? Can you do that or not?
I would recommend you close the hearing, and if the board is inclined, Chick can give you special conditions, basically assure compliance with the original special wetland permit conditions.
We're just going to cross-reference the prior permit, so want to have all that in order for the next meeting.
All right, can I get a motion to close for decision?
So moved.
Seeking conditions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 3019, Rickless Trust. I'm sorry, 3018, James Gleason, 128 Halsey Street.
Again, for the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. Have an affidavit of posting and mailing. As it's getting late, I may read some of this so I don't miss anything, but this is obviously a little bit more involved than the previous application. It's an application to construct certain additions to the existing house, to remove a pre-existing non-conforming garage and construct a new garage, which is smaller and which is less non-conforming, and then to construct a small swimming pool, which requires a street setback but is not in the required front yard. I'll just mention briefly about the pool. You will see on the survey site plan that was prepared by the architect that the principal and accessory building setback areas are shown. Approximately 40% of the pool would be within that permitted area. It's also important to note that the pool is set back nearly 20 feet further from the street than the house is, so therefore it's not in the front yard per se. Now, the initial problem you can see with this property is, even though it's a conforming lot under the zoning, it's a very long and narrow lot with most of its frontage, the majority of its frontage on Cooper Street. The way the property's been improved, effectively the easterly side is the rear yard and the westerly side is the front yard. So the proposal for the garage and the pool would be to locate them essentially in the rear yard.
Bill, can I just interrupt you for a second? You said the lot was conforming.
I believe that in terms of...
The plan shows R12.5 and the lot size being 9,800.
Well, maybe I misspoke myself. If I did, I apologize.
Just want to make sure your plans are correct.
I apologize for that. Okay, I apologize. In any event, if you look at the Suffolk County tax map, which I have, you will see that the lots on Cooper Street, on the south side of Cooper Street, most of them are very long and narrow, but they run north and south. So the houses on those lots are typically set back further from Cooper Street than the existing house. If you look at the properties on the north side of Cooper Street, and I'll hand this up in a minute, you'll see that there is one lot that's opposite this, which is virtually the same size and configuration. And what we're proposing, especially in terms of the additions to the house, would be similar to those conditions which exist on its companion lot across the street. With the application, I submitted a copy of a previous variance which granted a relief for a deck to be located on the east side of the existing house. Part of the proposed addition on the east would be in place of that deck, so that deck would be removed. The reason I mention that is part of that area already received a previous relief from this board some years ago. I think it's important to note at this point what we're not looking for, since this appears to be a fairly active map. We're not looking for total lot coverage. We're under the maximum requirement for that. We're well under the GFA maximum with the proposed additions. We're not looking for any pyramid law relief, and in fact, you'll note from the elevations and floor plans which I submitted before the work session that on the south side of the house there's an existing pyramid law nonconformity which will be eliminated. So actually we're making the house more conforming with respect to the pyramid law. Furthermore, the proposed additions are not adding any new bedrooms. There are 4 bedrooms now. There will be 4 bedrooms when the project is finished, so that will not impact either off-street parking or the sanitary system requirements. One thing you'll notice, and I showed it for information only on the architect's site plan, is that even though we're asking for front yard setback relief for the additions and for the swimming pool and garage, if you look as a practical matter at what the setbacks are from the actual edge of pavement, they're quite a bit greater. So even though we need relief from a visual standpoint, it would appear that the impact is less. Now, just to go back for a minute to the property across the street, which I mentioned, which is comparable, which is the only comparable lot on this block. I have a copy of the survey for that, which I got from the building department, and that house enjoys a setback of about 16.4 feet from the street, whereas our property currently has a front yard setback of 13.4 feet. So the two lots are comparable in terms of front yard setbacks. So we're not looking to introduce something that's not typical for the other lot in the neighborhood, which is the same shape.
Does that property have a pool?
That property does not have a pool. But as I say, in terms of the additions to the house, and by the way, I'll get to the pool subject in a minute. Now that you mentioned it, I might as well.
Well, Gil, maybe before you do that, the prior variance, can you just summarize that?
Yeah, that was a variance for a deck to the east side of the existing house. And one of the reasons that was granted was that it did not increase roof space. So that was dated, was some time ago. That was in the original package which I submitted. That was dated 1992. And we're proposing to eliminate that deck, but construct an addition partly in place of where that deck was, some of which is conforming, some of which is not. Let's see, if you want to know the size of that deck, I can tell you in 1 second.
So that was not for any expansion of the house?
No, it was just for the deck.
So that wouldn't apply to the 50% roof?
Correct. It would not, because it was not, and it wouldn't apply to gross floor area either. That is correct. And in fact, the only other thing I found, and I might not have specifically mentioned it, there was a variance granted for a dormer addition to this house, but it provided an increase in habitable space of only 29 square feet. And that was the only variance that was granted previously. So in terms of the 50%, that's all we've used up. And if you look at the calculations provided by the architect, you'll see that we have not expanded the property building by more than 50%.
Where's that calculation?
If you take these numbers, I haven't spelled it out exactly, but if you look at the numbers that are on the architect's plan, you'll see that with the existing...
Which plan is that?
That's this one.
Site plan?
Yeah, the site plan.
November 2nd.
Yeah, if you look, you have lot coverage and GFA. If you look at the right here, so you can see what you can derive from that we're not increasing the habitable space by more than 50%. In fact, right now, I'll just see if I can find that information.
Bill, how much of the dwelling is not conforming, and to what extent are you expanding?
Okay, that information I can have the architect break down.
Sure. Because a good portion of the dwelling is complying, but another portion is not.
Correct. I can certainly get you that calculation.
And the covered porch is going to be open?
I believe so. The architect, Kirk Lee, is here. Yes, it's going to be open.
There's no bedrooms above that. It's just a first floor roof porch?
Right. Correct. How much of the house? Let's see. Okay, that I can find out how much of the house is non-conforming. I'll get you that information. Okay, we did submit the floor plans which show basically what's happening with the additions. And as you will see, on the first floor, the plan is to expand the living room and dining room and kitchen, and add a mudroom, and to take existing bedroom space and put that on the second floor, so that instead of having 2 bedrooms on the first and 2 on the second, you'll have 1 bedroom on the first and 3 on the second, but there's no increase in the number of bedrooms. One thing you will also see from the aerial photograph of the neighborhood, which I have, is that this property, and you have to look a little carefully for it because it's a Google Earth picture, how heavily screened from the surrounding properties this property actually is. So the point being that it would have little impact on the surrounding neighbors. Does anybody have any question about the house additions at this point, which I can answer? I can have Mr. Lehman answer. If not, I can say a few words about the pool if you'd like. I did take that aerial photograph that you saw and I blew it up and I highlighted in yellow numbers of swimming pools that are located within the general area of the subject site, which is also marked yellow, and there are 14 of them in close proximity to this property. I have only one of those colored. I can provide you more of them if you want. I know that pools have lately been some controversy in the village, but I will point out that this situation is somewhat different in that the lot is a corner lot, number one. Number two, it's very long and narrow. And number three, the proposed pool is not by any means in the definitional front yard. In fact, to all intents and purposes, it's in the side and rear yard.
Behind the house.
Well behind, about 20 feet further from the street than the house is. And I know that's something that you have quite often considered in whether or not to grant any kind of relief for these sorts of things. I did come across one case which was very similar, which was actually decided in 2015. It was a corner lot on the corner of Moses Lane and Armand Street. And if you look at that situation, it's not dissimilar from this one. Actually, this pool, in this particular case, required a little bit of front yard relief in addition to setback relief. But the board in this case found that it was reasonable given the size and shape of the lot and for other reasons. Excuse me?
What's that location?
This was on the southeast corner of Moses Lane and Armand Street, so it's not that far from where this property is. And it was a very short decision. And that the findings were that the shape of the subject parcel is such that the easterly portion has limited depth from Armand Street to the southerly line. So that's the same thing we got here. We have a relatively narrow building envelope north to south. We have a very good building envelope east to west. So I have copies of that. I'm not saying that you're absolutely bound by it, but it's certainly something that I would ask you to consider. I have some other cases, too, that I could offer, but I think that one is probably the closest in facts to the case we have presently.
The pool's here. And the only way to access it was through the mudroom? No, there's a door here, too.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll just briefly mention is that the easterly third of the proposed pool actually is currently taken up by where the existing garage is, which will be removed. So the amount of relief for actual structures in that area is not being increased by that much. And you can see that the garage, as we've proposed it, as I mentioned, is set back further from the street than the existing, and in fact, it's smaller. Question might come up about the pool equipment, and it would be proposed to be put inside the garage.
Looks like off the kitchen on the plans is like a trellis or something.
I'm sorry?
It looks like off the kitchen, there's a trellis or something. Which is there structure there?
Let me just take a look.
It doesn't show it on the survey.
Let's take a look. You're talking about on the plans?
Yeah. If you go off the kitchen.
Well, it says covered porch. I think that's.
No, on the south side.
Oh, on the south side. Is that a trellis?
Yes, there's an existing pergola there. They were hoping to maintain that for some shade.
Okay, that should probably be shown on this plan then.
It's existing and proposed to remain.
Is there a wood deck under that pergola?
Currently, the wood deck that's proposed to be demolished is going to come down, and there's a pergola above that. We would reconstruct the pergola in the same footprint. but on the masonry terrace.
If you're going to do a lot more talking, would you please announce yourself?
Sure. Kirk Lehman, AML Architecture. Kirk, can you take us a little bit through what you're accomplishing? I mean, in particular, what I'm trying to match up is what expansion to the house is requiring the front yard variances, meaning the setbacks from the front yard.
So there's a couple issues with the house, the way it functions now. If you look at the plans, we can't have a driveway off of Halsey because it's too narrow and too close to the corner. So they enter from Cooper Street. They currently have to either come in their back door through their kitchen or walk around to the front of the house. What we're accomplishing is we're creating an entry on that side with the covered porch and the mudroom before you come into the kitchen. And if you look at the existing kitchen, it's rather small. It's 10 by 11. So we're proposing a new kitchen in a similar location, larger, and an entry off of Cooper.
But you could give up the trellis area and push the kitchen to the south instead of pushing it closer to Cooper Street. Was that considered?
It wasn't. We could take a look at that. The one issue is the roof line that's happening above is tying in on the center of the gable, which is creating the third bedroom upstairs, which is directly above this space, which ties into the center of the house. If you look at the second floor.
You say the entrance to Halsey is not functionally, not used, but you're proposing a porch?
They have pedestrian entry there, and because the easterly side of the property is tight, they wanted to have a bit of space outside to enjoy the front lawn.
It's also important to note, if I didn't point out directly, is that none of the proposed construction is any closer to Cooper Street than the existing. As far as vehicular access is concerned, obviously the way things have been set up, the access is and has been from Cooper Street. That's where the garage is, that's where the driveway is, and so forth.
And the parking spaces will be 10 feet from the property line?
Yep.
I don't see any.
3 spaces?
Three, in fact, I have a drawing that, I think in this zone, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the front and side yard, it can be a 5-foot setback, and in the rear yard, it has to be a 10-foot setback. So this is a front yard, so we'll maintain a 5-foot setback from Cooper Street, and it's obviously well more than 5 or even 10 feet from the east property line. Now, I did do a sketch that shows the parking. If you bear with me, I'll find that. Here it is, right here. And I can have Kirk show it on the line, but it does show actually 1 space in the garage and 2 spaces outside, since it's a 4-bedroom house that requires 3 spaces.
Is there a floor plan for the garage or a plan for the garage?
Not as of yet, but we could create one.
Only because you have a 10-foot side and you have a possible pyramid. I'm not sure what your design is.
So we wouldn't be asking for any relief.
Make sure there's compliance there.
Yeah, we wouldn't be asking for any relief for that anyway.
The old garage will be coming down, right?
Old garage, which is bigger and more non-conforming, is coming down.
So what's proposed here? 2 cars stacked?
No.
Single car garage with the pool equipment in the back.
No, if you look at the plan, there'll be 1 car garage, and then there are 2 spaces off to the side.
No, I'm talking about the garage itself, interior.
It'll be a one car garage. It's not wide.
It's much longer. It's 28 feet long. So
The pool equipment.
And
Going in the
storage.
back.
Right. Pool equipment and storage.
What kind of garage door are you putting on this?
Sorry?
What kind of garage door are you putting on this? It's like a trapezoidal garage. You open it up, it's going to bang into the side wall.
That's like that building that's on North Main Street, I think, that's on North Sea Road, that's cocked off on an angle. think one of the reasons they did that was to maintain the setback along the rear property line to give them enough depth. Is there any reason you couldn't square it off? So
No, and we could submit plans for the garage.
Right, we could.
By the work session, showing the pyramid encroachment.
So it looks as if you'd like to know exactly how much of the is non-conforming, existing, and proposed, and then we'll show the trellis, and we'll submit a floor plan for the garage.
And you're adding a chimney on the north side? Is that shown on the survey?
I'm sorry?
Is that extending beyond the, is that on the survey?
It is not. That was actually a late addition to it, so we can certainly add that.
The chimney?
Chimney, yeah.
It looks like there's a fireplace and chimney on the north side that's not on the survey.
Okay, we can add that. We can certainly do that. And if you want, I can have Kirk formalize the parking that I've laid out there.
One other item with the proposed design, the existing ridge height is about 22 feet, and they like the small character of the house. We're not going to change that, so there's no higher massing to this house.
Anything further from the board? From the room?
So Gil, you're going to submit, or did you submit copies of those prior decisions?
I did.
Or other decisions? I didn't get a copy, you know.
Yeah, that was part of the package.
Okay, I'll look for it.
Get a motion to adjourn for all purposes? Second. All in favor?
It wasn't handed out tonight, it was in the package.
It was in the original package, huh?
No, I'm talking about the other properties you were talking about.
Oh, no, that was all submitted tonight.
Okay, I didn't get a copy of that, so I'll just make sure. I'll look for
Do
it.
you need a copy? Okay.
Sure, I'll look for it in the file.
Okay.
Dan's leaving?
No, just for a minute. Got a ham sandwich back there.
I think that's what I'm having for dinner when I get home. What number are you up to?
I'm up to 3019. So, wait.
29?
Yeah.
So, thank you. That's good.
Okay. Yes. Number 3019, Marcia Rickless Trust.
I run out of voice, please apologize. I'll accept my apology. Hopefully, this should be a fairly simple application. It's the old. That's what I'm trying to make
Just get
everything
the simple ones,
pleasant, warm and fuzzy, right?
Simple applications are us.
No, the one time I said to the planning board that was a slam dunk, I'll never say that again. Never say that again. Okay, this is the old Hirschfeld property, which you may be familiar with on Meadow Lane. And the proposal is for a single variance, which namely is a dune setback variance to provide the squaring off of this very small portion of the existing house. Dune setback variance to 76.6 feet. The total amount of the addition, the square footage of the addition is 135 square feet. And if you look at the situation, what it is to square off the area which is currently devoted to the kitchen. So no new facilities are being added, no additional bedrooms, bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. I believe
all over existing improvements, right?
I'm sorry?
It's all over existing.
All over existing disturbed area, and if you look at the survey, quite a bit of the house and other improvements are further south than this is.
This one's in deck area.
So this shouldn't be...
One-story addition.
It's a one-story, this is a one-story kitchen addition. And I believe I submitted the property card for this property too. Question whether or not there's been any previous expansion that required variance relief. And in fact, there isn't. I had gotten some other variances for a garage and for a shed and for a tennis pavilion. There was an application a number of years ago which I brought for a stair tower to the main house, which was withdrawn. So this is the first application for the house that talks about any expansion. And since we're looking at the size of the house, which is quite large, 135 square feet, barely scratches the surface of 50%. It's considerably landward of other parts of the house which protrude further to the south. As Mr. Brune points out, this area is disturbed. It's already a gravel area, so it will not be increasing the problems in that area. We don't need coastal erosion relief because what we're expanding is less than 25% of the ground cover south of the coastal erosion line. We would need a coastal erosion permit, but that's an administrative permit that's handled by the building department. As far as the dunes are concerned, it's a very healthy dunes situation particularly in front of this portion of the house. I had Mr. Lehman, who's the project architect, take some photos. This is obviously the ocean is here looking to the house from the ocean. You can see the dune is fairly high there. It's very well vegetated in front of the area. So I'll submit some of these photos for the record. I also have a Google Earth photo of the property, which again, this is the area where we'd be placing the addition. You can see the dune is heavily vegetated and very stable in front of the area in question, so that shouldn't be an issue. I think that should conclude my presentation unless you have any particular questions.
Bill, the survey shows a proposed revegetation, proposed tennis storage. This is all based on prior applications.
That was the prior application.
I just want to clarify that.
Right, and in fact, there was a wetland special permit that I got a couple of years ago for this. Right, that's correct.
Have that all been installed at this point?
I'm not sure, but I can check.
I do remember those tennis storage buildings, and all of that was heavily reviewed by the board.
Yes, it was.
It's currently being constructed. In the process.
The tennis court is, the house is tennis court.
Unless you have any other questions.
Hey, Gil, how do they get into that area to work? It looks like it's in a courtyard, and they'd have to go around from the dune side to get...
Just asked that question when another applicant asked Mr. Lehman. It turns out there's a breezeway that is located right in front of that area, so you can pass underneath that to get to the area where we're constructing.
So they can bring all the equipment, all the work, everything can happen right through there?
Then go right through there.
They don't have to do any excavation or anything?
Nope.
They're just going to...
Nope. Like it's drawn on. If you look right here, you can see where my finger is, this wavy line which Kirk kindly drew on, it's a pass-through, so you can, it's a very small project, so they won't need any large equipment to go through there. It's right in here. And obviously there's plenty of room on the parking area to stage construction vehicles and equipment and materials. nothing further to add unless you'd like me to.
Questions from the board? Chick?
No questions, very straightforward.
Wayne?
No questions.
Aaron? So, are our submissions coming or no?
No, I think we're done unless you, I think that's it.
So, move we close, or is there a motion to close for decision?
So moved.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much.
All right. And done. All right. Number 3020, Eric Raymond, Oregon Street.
Here I am again. Another affidavit of posting and another affidavit of mailing.
Another slam dunk.
No, I never use that term. I've learned my lesson.
We're not the planning board.
Did I write a letter to, should I address it to the planning board? I'm not getting that senile, am I?
You did it in front of the planning board once.
Okay, this is a relatively minor project. The proposal is to add a mudroom to the rear of the existing house, which enters into the back entrance. You can see on the plans. By the way, CMX Sammy, the architect, is here if you have any questions of him on this. As you look at the site plan which he prepared, it shows that the existing rear yard setback of the house is 23.9 feet, and the setback of the proposed addition, which basically fills in a corner, would be the same. There is proposed to be a roofed but unenclosed porch to get into that mudroom, which I believe has a setback under the survey of, I think, of 3/10 of a foot closer to the property line. It's also important to note, I believe the survey showed, which I submitted, that a good portion of the proposed addition previously had a deck. Granted, it wasn't roofed, but there was a deck there which would be removed. That space will be incorporated into this addition. The location is dictated by the rear kitchen door as shown on the plans. Obviously, it's a good way to get into the kitchen rather than having to go through the main part of the house. I also have here some Google Earth photos of the property. And as you can see, I don't know if we can blow that up. It would help if that could be blown up. Oops, blowing up myself. Okay. This is the subject property. The addition would go right where my finger is in that little L shape, which is currently open. The neighbor who could be most possibly affected is the neighbor to the east, and you can see his house is extremely further to the, I guess it's the south and the east. This would basically face part of his swimming pool, and you can also note that there's a very heavy privet hedge that runs along the property line. So I would think that this will be a relatively minor situation. I did look at the village records. There are no previous variances have been granted. Right. Okay. Yeah, there have been no previous variances granted for this property. By the way, a number of years ago, I lived diagonally across the street from it, so I'm somewhat familiar with it. This is a picture which Mr. Sammy just provided me of the rear of the house, and you can see the deck with its steps, and that's where the addition would be located to fill in that corner.
The deck is not roofed?
The current deck is not roofed.
The proposed?
The proposed deck would have a roof over it, but no sides.
And it would remain that way?
It would remain that way. In fact, you can certainly stipulate that since you've done that in other cases. So we really can't do this any other way because that's where the kitchen is. And as you can see, the house is fairly old. And These clients have owned this property for quite a few years, and it's been in the family for a few years, and they want to keep it that way.
Gil, you have a copy of your CO?
I have a copy of the building permit card for it, which I'll give you.
For what, the house?
Yeah, that covers the house. Actually, the house was issued, CO 684, issued in 1974.
Whatever, just...
Yeah, and I give this, and the swimming pool got a CO in 1984, when it was constructed by my client, so I can give that.
You said there's no prior variance.
No prior, if you look at the card, no, I looked at it, so it's a blank, no planning board, no board of appeals, no ARB. That'll be coming around to you in a minute. Anybody has any other, I have nothing further to add unless anybody has any questions.
Questions from the board? From the attorney?
None.
From the room?
Is this the decision?
Yeah.
I move we close this application for decision.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 3021 Southampton Bathing Court.
I'll be reading.
Okay, we only have three.
So you're down to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm recused. Everything.
Need 3 votes, right? I'm not feeling
Yeah,
well.
I got to do it right. This is my last hurrah for the evening.
No, I guess I don't. Well, did he give it to me? Yes.
He gave it to you?
I do have it.
Okay.
This is a request for a couple of very minor additions to the existing facilities at the Bathing Corporation, as pointed out on the survey that was done by the Rayner Group. The first is a request to square off the southwest corner of the existing storage building that's located adjacent to South Main Street. The second is to expand the row of cabanas located closest to South Main Street over an existing deck. By the way, the construction in terms of the storage shed is also over an existing deck, so we're not increasing lot coverage on either of those additions. And the other two
Just making existing cabana space larger or adding cabana space?
No, we're making it the existing cabana space larger. I have Don King, who was the
Lockers.
manager of the
Lockers,
club.
really, right?
What's that?
The lockers, more or less?
Yeah, they're really lockers. As you can see the narrowness of this, and you look at the real cabanas, you see how much wider they are.
Yeah.
And there were plans that I believe were submitted with the application that show what's going to happen. I think it's mainly to store things that people use, paddle boards and things of that nature. The other two additions are a proposed deck to provide, two proposed decks to provide better access to the other storage building, which is located a little further to the south. Let's see what else I can. Again, it's obvious, I think, if you look at this, that even though these two additions need dune setback relief, they're much further from the crest of the dunes than other construction. So that should not create any issue. By the way, the dune system here, fortunately, is fairly stable at this time. In fact, Mr. King today took some photographs of the dune in front of the proposed activity. I have 6 or 7 of those, which I'll hand up for the record.
And the purpose for the proposed deck alongside storage building 2,
it's to provide...
What's there now, just sand?
I think so. Just sand. I think just to provide better access to that storage building there and the little deck to the south. As you can see, with respect to these lockers that I mentioned, they're only about 6 feet wide as it is now, so they're really not functionally that useful. As you probably also know, and as the survey shows, this entire property is bulkheaded, so all of the work will be constructed landward of the existing bulkhead. As far as the lot coverage is concerned, which is affected by the 2 decks adjacent to the storage building number 2, that would increase the lot coverage on this property by only 1/10 of 1%, so it's virtually negligible. The application also submitted what the baseline for square footage of buildings was. That was something I did a number of years ago. The baseline was 54,318 square feet. The expansions that were previously done used up only 1,033 square feet, which is only 0.019% expansion, and we're adding, so we'll be bringing up the total expansion of basically 2%. So that's obviously we're well under the limit. We did submit with the application copies of all the existing COs and the previous variances, some of which I got a number of years ago. I think this...
Technically, did they look at, where you get, I know it's 0.1%, but you're already over.
Yeah, yes, we are.
But lots of times, if you're adding something where you need something in a useful area, do they have areas maybe where they can decrease some of this lot coverage? That is, area that's not as useful or practical. Did they look at that?
That's something I can find out. I know that in the past, this board has recognized this property in the Meadow Club is really unique and unusual, and the Meadow Club has done some similar things where we've added augmented facilities where necessary, so we would hope it wouldn't be necessary given the really minor nature of what
I'm just thinking going forward, because now every time they do anything, you're already over,
Right. Well, that's why we're keeping track of it, and that's why I made it a point to give you those numbers so you could see what it is. So given the circumstances, I would think that it's so minuscule. But at some point, we may reach a point where...
You might want to survey what's there.
Right.
Yeah.
I would think that given this, we're talking about, in terms of the 2 decks, they total 176 square feet, which is...
Yeah, it's not much.
It's a grain of sand on this whole thing. But you're right, in the future we can, anything, and there's not too much more they can do here, really.
No, but if they want to, they might have to remove something somewhere.
That's true, that's true, if it's something significant, and I agree with you. But I think in this case, we can, since it's so minor, I would suggest that maybe we could go with this as it is. As the other 2 additions are on top of something else, so we're not increasing lot coverage there.
Right.
Any more questions from the board?
No, not to me.
From Chick?
We're conferring.
All right.
Gil, I have a question.
Sure.
Just looking at your plans, and I noticed the coastal erosion line goes through the middle of the property.
Right.
And just wondering if any relief is necessary under the coastal erosion regulations.
Well, under that, as you know, if you increase by more than 25% of the ground cover that's south of that line, you'd need a coastal erosion variance.
Which goes to my next question, and you gave us copies of various grants of relief that the property has received in the past. Is there something that indicates you know, what percentage, you know, as board members are just pointing out, there comes a point, you know, you keep incrementally, it's only less than 1% now, but you keep incrementally increasing, it gets to a point where it may exceed that, and relief may be necessary. So I just don't know the history, and it may be that there's not, but we should have, you know, you did a lot of work to document, you know, the various decisions, but it might be important for us just to document how much, what has been done historically, so that we know, and that there's not going to be a problem in granting any relief now or in the future.
Well, just as I indicated, I think before, with the variances that increased square footage on the property in 2014 and I think in 2004, the total expansion then was, when you added all of that up, was 1,033 square feet. And I think if you just look at the survey, you can obviously see that that amount of square footage is way, way, way below 25.
No, I get that, but I mean, the coastal erosion line, you know, and we're monitored by the state, and that's been in place since 1988. So the question is, since 1988, what expansions have taken place? And, you know, a minor expansion is 25%. I know there's a large area there, but we should just make sure what those numbers are.
Yeah, so these are the numbers I got from looking at the previous decisions, 1,033 square feet.
In all those decisions that you gave us.
When you added them up, one of them was 503 square feet and the other was 530 square feet. So that, I think if you just look at how much is south of the line, there's no way that we're anywhere near the 25%. And if you add those numbers to the numbers I'm requesting now, it was still way, way, way below 25%.
In all your calculations, there's nothing on the plans, though.
No, if you want me to submit something in writing.
I think we want to put something in. That's all I'm trying to do is create that, what you're submitting in the record.
Sure. And particularly with reference to the coastal erosion, sure.
You know, I'm also concerned about the 50% rule as well. So all of that, you know, all those percentages come into play with all those elements of the code.
I think that was that 50% expansion was documented in the application which Mary Jane prepared. I think she laid that out. If you look at the application itself, that was in there. But if you
I'm
want to
assuming that the proposed additions all comply to FEMA?
I would assume that they would. And again, if there's more than a 50% expansion in the market value, then we'd have to comply with FEMA. So we would be under that. So the hope would be, I guess, if I provided you a letter that lays all of that out, then we could maybe close it subject to that.
Yep.
Anything else on the board?
Have anything?
No.
Or he's from the room. Want to close it for decision pending submissions?
That's fine.
Somebody make a motion for that? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Thank you, gentlemen.
We're running out of people.
That was a layup. Wasn't a slam dunk. It was a layup.
Thus endeth the lesson.
Next. 3022, William Pappas.
I'm curious what building department said.
That's why I want to try and document it now.
You're going to let them know they can return?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Gotta keep going.
I'm going home.
There we go.
This is the one where we're asking to reduce the size of the pool house and slide it over a little bit.
Pool house. It seems like it's 15 feet in here.
Could also make it.
Yeah, I'm gonna find that out. You're down to 2 now?
We're ready.
You're ready?
Here's our new
You're ready.
Here's our new chairwoman.
Convince us, but
Have a seat.
I think I'll get something to eat.
trying to see the picture, see the floor plan.
I didn't see you there.
Oh, yeah, this was one where the shading shows what thing.
We'll give it to that.
That's very helpful. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you're saying also that you don't need it.
From here, let me see, they have 10 feet 9 inches, here 11 feet.
Back to the meeting.
10, 9, is 8 feet or 9 feet.
All on camera.
I made the move. All righty. Where are we? 3022, Ms. Zalunga? William Pappas.
Lisa Zaluga. Shall I wait?
I don't see why.
What do we have?
William
We
Pappas.
have 3022.
What'd you do with that one?
Well,
You approve it?
yeah, no, we didn't approve it. We closed it for
You're
decision.
gonna get me in trouble.
We closed it for decision, pending submissions. Anyway, excuse us.
Do you guys all have copies of the plan? Do you want me to hand them up? I have little ones if you want them.
This is Pappas?
Yes.
This is Pappas. We have
We have a floor plan and elevations,
Okay.
elevations and such.
Survey, aerial.
All right, for the applicant,
Mrs. Zaluga, architect for William and Allison Pappas. This is a proposal for a 349 square foot pool house. This lot is about 40,000 square feet, just over 40,000 square feet in R40. It is on the corner of Pierpont Street and Hunting Street, so it has two front yards. It's improved with a two-story residence and a swimming pool. The location of the swimming pool kind of is, it creates the only place where I could find a proposed pool house location. So the 349 square foot pool house is proposed where 800 square feet would be allowed if I had the room for it. The swimming pool is 69.8 feet off of Pierpont, which means that I cannot put a pool house on that side of the pool in a conforming location. And the swimming pool is, it's set obliquely on the property to the side and rear property lines. So in terms of my setback off of the side property line, although I am asking for a 16-foot setback where 20 feet is required, it's actually at an angle on the proposed pool house. So it's really 68 square feet of that pool house that I'm looking for that would be non-conforming. And you can see that on the plans. I've kind of hatched that area of the pool house. I have proposed the pool house to be 14 feet high. And basically, I hipped the roofs to keep it down low on all sides. So the walls, on the neighbor's side would be about 9.5 feet high. I show the pyramid lines. Obviously, I'm way far away from the pyramid. I would apologize, on the survey it shows a pool equipment location on the south side of the proposed pool house. Squires located that without me realizing it. I'm planning on putting the pool equipment in the basement of the pool house. If you look at the Google Earth image, you can see that this property here is on the corner, and then the properties to the east both also have swimming pools and pool houses, as well as other properties in that little neighborhood there. The reason I'm asking for the pool house is that the existing house, which they purchased as existing, has one door on the rear of the property that opens into the living room, and that's it. So to get any kind of kitchen services or bathroom services to the people out in the swimming pool, people have to traipse through the living room and get all the way to the front of the house to the powder room that's in the front of the house. So we're trying to get something that's a little closer to the swimming pool. I believe the neighbors here also.
Question I have is, it looks like you have about 11 feet between the pool and the front of the pool house.
Yep, just under 11, 10'9".
Yeah, and if you had moved it 2 foot closer, you'd need a lot less relief. Is there any reason that you couldn't do that?
2 feet might be a little bit. I was trying to keep at least 10 so that I wasn't disrupting the swimming pool when I was digging for my foundation.
You'd still have around 9 feet if you did that, though.
Yeah, I thought 10 was kind of a minimum in terms of, anytime you want to get any septic systems or anything, they're actually 20 feet from a swimming pool. So I thought 10 feet would be my maximum. So then with my footings, I kind of, 10'9" was where I ended up. But I could probably head closer by a foot maybe, but I don't know that I'd want to get too much closer because I don't want to damage the swimming pool when I'm excavating.
You feel if you got closer, you would damage the pool? Is that what you're saying?
Well, because I do want to put the pool equipment in the basement, so I want to dig down a portion of that to be 7 feet. So I don't want to. I really don't want to get too close to it. If I damage it, then I'm.
You have to overdig by probably 3 feet.
Yeah.
To do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the pool equipment is already located on the side of the pool. So in the pictures, if you look at either the Google pictures or the pictures that I took, you can see the property is heavily screened, that whole entire corner. And that was part of the reason that I kept I tried to keep the pool house down so that I wouldn't be anywhere close to visible from any neighbors.
What's going to happen in the pool house?
It's just a one big open room, like I said, with a little bit of a kitchenette services and a bathroom services. So it's really to get food and drinks and bathroom services.
I got services.
Facilities? What would you like me to say? A toilet?
Facilities are better. Right?
So it's an area about 19 by 14?
Yep. Inside would be 13 with the walls.
Pushed it back that way.
I'm right up against the rear property line, so I was trying not to ask for setback relief on both sides.
I was wondering if you went towards Hunting Street just a couple of feet, you'd hit that notch, and then you'd be up to 18, 20 feet.
I went towards the street.
There's a notch here.
Oh, yes, of course, I'm an architect. I was trying to keep it centered on the pool.
Symmetries. It's correct.
Then you have to move the fence.
I'd have to move everything, yeah. If you look at the pictures, I don't know if it's truly visible in the pictures, the grade goes up. It's kind of an odd situation. The grade actually goes up to the swimming pool. So as I come forward on that property, I'm going to kind of be falling off on the grade there too. It's a little weird. Most people don't go up to their swimming pool.
How do you access the basement area?
From the back side, it drops off again. It's almost as if they bermed up to the pool. It's a little interesting. So on the back side of it, it
have a
goes
hatch,
down. Yeah, I'll just have a hatch to get into it.
But what would happen if you moved 2 feet towards Hunting Street? What would that be? Then your 16-foot becomes, I don't know, 20 feet?
No.
No? 18 feet?
No, it becomes probably 16 foot 4. If I move 2 feet over, that angle is very shallow.
Go that way.
Yeah.
And you're measuring to this. What's the difference between this and this?
Well, you can a little bit, you'd be better off if you just moved the pool a little bit closer to the pool.
What if you wheeled it a little? Well,
We like to have the doors of the pool house centered on the pool, you know?
it's not centered.
You're taking up the existing patio, right? And redoing the entire patio between the pool and the pool house?
Yes, well, I mean, I'm feathering in where I'm recreating the corners.
We like to have
Says to be modified.
You start moving it
Yes,
down.
if you look on my plans, it's kind of in an arc right now, so I'm squaring it off.
Well, comments from the board?
I think they could move it a little closer to the pool so that you have a little less release than 4 feet.
The pool house is only 10 feet from the pool?
Let the record
Well,
note
it's almost
that the
11 feet,
applicant
10
shrugged
foot
10 foot 9.
Tight, you know, I don't mean...
the 10 foot between the house and the pool.
Yeah, that's not a lot of space. If you wanted to put a table in front of the pool house, I mean...
They've got plenty of patio space around space around the rest of the pool.
Patios around all
No,
the way.
there's only 4 feet around the sides of the pool.
Well, the other end, you have a big round patio.
They're gonna have to walk all the way over there to get services.
Good service.
The only place you can put chairs is down at the west end pool. Too narrow here and here.
Are you okay with the 16?
Yeah, I'm fine with the way it is.
Anybody from the floor like to speak? Oh.
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Andy Newman. My wife and I live to the east of the proposed project. We had some of the same concerns, I think, that were noted here in terms of the location of the pool house. We thought it could be pulled 4 feet closer to the pool, and it wouldn't be in the setbacks at all. If anything, it might be slightly into the northern setback, but very minimally. The other thing is, as Lisa noted, that the property slopes from the west side to the east side. It slopes down. So the impact on us is even greater because it's about 2 feet of elevation there. So while it's only 14 feet high, it's 16 feet on impact to us. While the property is hedged between us, the hedges aren't well maintained by our neighbors, and there's a lot of gaps in them. So it's not as well delineated between the two properties. And the other thing that we're concerned about is the runoff of the water with the additional structure. So.
Okay. And do you have any anything going on over there, part of your property?
We have seating along the back there.
Seating?
Well, we have a pool. So our seating goes along the northern side of the property and runs back toward that side.
You're to the north, right?
We're to the east.
To the east.
To the east. And your pool is 20 foot off the line, say, or?
Oh yeah, we're not in the setbacks at all.
And your equipment is between the 20 foot?
Our equipment, we built the house, we completed the house about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
We located the pool equipment in the basement of the pool house so that there would be no impact on any of the neighbors. And in fact, rather than locating our pool house on the west side of the property, which was a preference, we located it on the east side of the property so that it only faced against the neighbor's pool house to our east. We tried to minimize, when we did our construction, we tried to minimize any impact on any of the neighbors. no variances, it was all as of right.
So what would be your wish, to move it 4 feet?
4 feet closer to the pool. If that wasn't possible, we think 2 feet was certainly doable, and you could shrink the size of the pool house a little bit by a foot or two as well, from the west side to the east side, which would really minimize the impact on setbacks.
It's not centered. That way. Sure. I guess the property goes wider. So,
We do appreciate the fact that they want to locate the pool equipment in the basement.
Yes.
That's very nice. So we do appreciate that. It's not shown on any of the elevations. And in fact, the elevation shows that, the way the elevation looks, it looks like the property's level, so you don't see the slope back down to our property.
And it would be a little less high.
But no activity goes on to the east of the pool house. Nothing.
No, and if you look at the Google images, you can see where their pools, they put everything in their eastern corner. So their pool house and their swimming pool, it's much more than 20 feet from our property, from our shared property line. And of course, we're more than happy to revegetate or, buff up the hedges between them. If you look at the the aerial photos.
Which is your property there? Okay.
This is our property, and this is the neighbor's property. And our pool house is proposed to go right here.
Right.
So it's sort of, there's a pool to the south and to the west of your pool.
Correct. I mean, I think that the pool house will actually act as a buffer between the two in terms of noise between the pools.
What's the patio at that end of the pool now? I mean, how many feet of...
If you look
No,
on...
I'm just looking at the picture of the...
No, I know, but if you look at my drawing, you can see that dotted line, that dotted curve there. That's the pool patio
okay.
now. So I've shortened it by about 1.5 feet or so.
Okay.
Well, this gentleman would be happy, he said, I think, with 2 feet.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, like I said, I don't really particularly want to move it 2 feet closer to the pool because I'm a little concerned about that, but I might be able to shrink it a little bit and move it a little bit.
Like if you made the pool house 13 feet,
Right,
that would
exactly.
make the roof a little bit lower, which is an impact, and moved it a foot closer, that would eliminate
pick it up.
2 feet.
Yep.
Then you're down to, you only need 2 feet of relief. And,
Could make the pool house a little
and
bit
the other
smaller
thing
too.
is, can you put gutters on the back of it
Of
to
course,
dry
of course.
well?
Yes, of
Which
course.
would then solve any runoff, since it seems that it pitches towards his property.
It does, and I think actually we'll be solving that problem because right now it's actually, the grade actually pitches towards him, and we'll be stopping that with the pool house sub. But of course, I'll put
Then you're
leaders and
gonna have
gutters.
the pool house run off,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
All righty. Any further comments from the floor? So, we want to...
Just one question. The survey will be redone and the elevations to reflect that the pool equipment will go into the basement?
Yes. Okay. All right, so can we have a motion to adjourn for all purposes? All in favor?
Thank you.
All right. Oh, yeah? Come down your road on the wrong side. This one. Okay. Yeah, lost the sheet. 2975, Willow Lane Holdings.
The applicant, John Bennett and Reed. Some time ago, the board granted variance relief. Well, actually, there was some relief granted. The whole purpose of the relief that was granted was to allow the applicant the homeowner to keep an additional cottage that had previously been traded off for some other relief on the property. And as part of the board's grant of allowing the property to maintain the third cottage, the board imposed some conditions. I think and they were all conditions that were offered by the applicant, but the primary condition was that the main house, which is, as with all of these, are well underway, the main house was to be limited to somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 square feet. I forget the exact number, but where there could be an 18,000 square foot house. And that there was a covenant filed, and the concept is that so long as there were 3 additional cottages, this house, the main house, could only be between 8,000 and 9,000 square feet. If one of the cottages were to be removed, then that limitation would go away. But there's no intention to do that. This is a family cottage. I hope you've been able to visit the site. It's really quite something what's gone on down there. This was a site that was just in effect underutilized now, and our client has really lovingly restored these 3 cottages and built a very appropriate main house, and hopefully you've seen that the pool is under construction as well. So what were we here for? One of the other conditions in order to have us allow us to keep this third cottage was that we offered to sink this pre-existing tennis court. So we're here to ask the board to remove that condition because the neighborhood, not only my applicant, but the neighborhood as a whole, I think there are 7 letters in the file. The neighborhood as a whole is very concerned about the effect that sinking this court would have on the London plane trees that are in the street right of way. As everybody knows, it's sort of a magical alley of trees down on Wyandanch that provides a pretty unique sense of place there. And there's a significant concern not only by the applicant but by the neighbors that sinking the court would impact on these trees that are in the street right of way. So we have, I think, 7 letters from neighbors and an affidavit from both an arborist and from Ed Hollander, who's the landscape architect. I think probably, so I'll just read one of the letters from the neighbors, parts of it, from Andrew Ty, who's the neighbor who lives right across the street and would be probably the most affected. And he says, and this is very similar to most of the letters in support, I reside at 123 Wyandanch across from my new neighbor, Holly Peterson, at 90 Wyandanch Lane. I'd like to state that the noise from the court as it stands does not in any way upset or disturb us. I would like to state clearly that as a resident of the street, I do not believe any sinking of the court that could damage the root system of any tree on this street is worth it. These trees make the wonderful tunnel effect and are what make Wyandanch so famous, and to do anything to threaten them and cause a break in the tree line would be a disaster. If anyone on the block would be most affected by her tennis court or the potential sinking of it, that would most likely be me and my family who live across the street. We very much hope that everyone will concur that forcing her to sink the court is a risk none of us wants to take. Also a letter from the neighbor to the north who is significantly concerned about the effect that this would have. So, and then from Mr. Hollander, I'm not going to read these into the record, but Ed Hollander is also concerned about the effect of sinking the court on the London plane trees. and also, by affidavit, he says so, and also a letter from Michael Gaines, who says that this would, in all likelihood, have in effect, kill particularly these 4 trees that are in the area of the tennis court, 4 or 5 trees. Now, Gaines is, as the arborist says, that you shouldn't even have any planting, screen planting around the trees. So, but I just don't know. It's really up to you folks. But so what I did, I presented 2 alternatives. One is the Hollander design that shows screening, additional screening around the trees, around the court rather. And because we weren't sure if the board would go so far as to allow no screening around the trees. The other is a design which shows no additional screening around the trees. As you can see from the photographs, however, there's a stockade fence here and a very substantial privet that does, in effect, screen the trees. But in exchange for no screening, additional screening around the tennis court, we proposed, instead of just looking at a cyclone fence or a chain link fence, to have a decorative lattice around the court. That would be if the board were to consider no additional screening around the court, such as has been proposed by Michael Gaines, the arborist. But if that's too much of a reach, we also have an alternative that does show some arborvitae screening around the court. But it's been the consistent, when the applicant first came to me and said that she actually had been approached by some neighbors who were concerned about this, I said, well, this better not be just a supposition. This better not be just a guess that maybe there will be some damage to these London plane trees. And so she did get not only Ed Hollander, but an independent arborist to certify that there would be, in all likelihood, the arborist said, in all likelihood, they would be in effect fatal on these London plane trees that are right in the right-of-way. So the request simply is to, and remember, this is a pre-existing non-conforming tennis court, and we did offer to sink it as a result of the relief granted in the prior variance, but it's simply put, the request is to remove that condition that would require the sinking of the court as a result not only of the letters from the neighbors who would be the most affected and who are in support of our request to relieve that condition, but also from Ed Hollander and Mr. Gaines, the arborist.
Sir, did you have an arborist years ago when you had that? When you came before us, was there an arborist involved?
No.
Let me ask you this. Why would you plant arbor vitae in front of, I don't know, I call them sycamores, you call them London plane trees. Wouldn't the sycamores compete in times of drought?
I think if anything, well, that's what the arborist says.
That's what
Mr. Hollander thinks that it can be done.
Why do it?
Why do it? And also, in my experience, when you plant, just from my own experience on my own property, when you plant arbor vitae next to privet, it kills the privet.
Yeah.
Oh,
excuse me?
You can't have that.
No, not in Southampton.
I think the process of doing, if they sank it, they would do, what, 4 feet?
Yeah, 4 feet, but then you have to dig down
retaining walls, you have to overdig.
You have to overdig.
Do the retaining wall, so now you're going to cut even closer to the trees. It looks like they have a big electrical transformer, which means then they're going to have to trench and probably reroute all the wiring for the whole property, which means trenching it out through and the sycamore trees. And then you're going to have to put a drainage system in outside the tennis court. So the impact is greater than just the tennis court.
I think, to be quite candid, when we offered the condition, because we were going to keep one of the other cottages that we said we were going to take away, I don't think there was enough thought about really what the effect was of sinking that court in that area. I've been being very candid with you. And so usually the reason you have tennis courts, you sink the tennis court is the impact on the neighbors. And the neighbors, I think, with the exception of one, are
what objection is that, noise?
from the one neighbor? Well, I think the neighbor might be here with counsel to speak, but I did speak to Patrick Fife, and what we did, who represents the neighbor to the south, and what we did was where the pool is, we planted it out. This pool's in a conforming location. We have a significant planting plan by the pool, although there's no requirement to do so. And you can see in the photographs that we submitted, you can see there's a couple things I want to point out to you. There's the pool under construction, but there's also significant new planting going on as per the Hollander landscape design. But then the other thing from a visual point of view, if you look at this photograph, I took this photograph standing here on the southerly boundary line of the Peterson property as it joins the Weymouth property. So if you're standing here, looking to the northwest, which is what this photograph is, visually you don't see the pool. The Weymouth house is here. It's not that far from the property line. It's about probably 30, 40 feet. It's a big house. But if you're standing here, I was standing here taking a photograph to the northwest where the pool is. And the view of the pool is all obscured by the cottages and the construction. So it's not going to be a visual impact on it. There's no visual impact, and the noise is 300 feet or so, 350 feet.
Just how noisy is it anyway?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, one of the neighbor across the street says, "I'd like to state that the noise from the court as it stands does not in any way upset or disturb us." They're right across the street.
That's the closest one, right?
Closest one.
So one question, John. Sorry.
Yes.
Did you guys look into moving the tennis court?
Why would I move a pre-existing non-conforming tennis court?
Because you're not willing to sink it.
Yeah, well, no, we would just withdraw the request.
Okay.
I mean, there's no, where would you put it?
You have a team of people working on it.
No, where would you put it? I mean, that would be crazy, Mark.
You might have to dig something up, too.
Here's I'll make the court for you.
No, I mean, you'd be moving driveway access around, but you'd be sliding it to the east.
Then you have, these are all built. They're all under construction. Sliding it to the east.
I know the residences are under construction, but you could...
No, these are all, Mark, the pool's 50, 60, 70, it's all but one.
I'm not anywhere close.
Shifting the tennis court 20 feet to the east.
I'm not anywhere close to the pool.
Trees.
Well, that would need...
What cost is that?
Well,
to what end?
The court anyway.
To what end? I mean, the reason...
Protect the trees. I thought that's what we're talking about tonight, protecting the trees.
Well, the trees aren't being harmed by a tennis court at grade.
I agree. So we know that, but we've agreed to sink the tennis court. If you moved the tennis court to the east, could you sink it without harming the trees?
I would just withdraw the request at that time. Candidly, I think it's an additional burden. There's no need for it. I mean, when you impose a condition, you want to have some requirement. What is the effect of the condition is to mitigate the potential negative effect of the request. But here, all the neighbors are in support of it.
Aren't all tennis courts now sunken in the village?
Not a pre-existing non-conforming.
I understand. Yeah. All new tennis courts are now sunken.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But what I'm saying, Mark, is that when you analyze why you impose a condition, you impose a condition to mitigate some sort of issue that's created by what the applicant is asking for. And there's no nexus here between
John, you're suggesting that the condition that you offered in the previous approval wasn't valid to start with. wasn't valid, there was no nexus to the expansion of the
Oh, there's no
house.
nexus whatsoever. No.
So why was it offered?
It was offered because I wanted to get the third court, the third cottage. I wanted to, because the board had originally said, take the third cottage away. And I said quite candidly to my client, if you're going to ask to keep that third cottage, you have to give something back.
Also because it was the normal thing to do at the time. It was the usual thing to do.
Yes.
Everybody said, oh, we'll sing this tennis court.
Okay. But the big condition, I think the big, and we didn't, to be honest with you, we didn't think it through what would be the effect of it. But the big condition that was offered, the really big condition, and the thing that I think, it was the fact that this that could have been 18,000 square feet would be limited to between 8 and 9. So that was the really big condition that was offered. The rest was, I don't mean to, it was clearly a condition that was offered. I don't mean to denigrate this condition that we offered, but it was to a certain degree fluff. What else can we give?
And I think we're some,
excuse me?
You have letters from
7.
That are all in support.
All in support.
and arguably, we were remiss to a degree in not noting that. You don't have to respond to that.
Okay.
Do we want to hear from the public? Maybe there's...
No, I will, but we still have the attorney there.
Sure.
Yeah. And so again, Mark, I understand what you're saying, but it's all of the stuff is in the ground. It's all in construction. To what end is that? You're not mitigating something that would be created as a result of the request that I'm making. There's not going to be any difference. Why do you usually sink a tennis court? For noise attenuation? For
Just looks better in the
visuals?
community.
Moving it, excuse me?
It looks better in the community.
Okay,
Sunken
but
tennis courts are more
moving
attractive.
this tennis court 20 feet is not going to
Who
make
says
any
that?
difference.
Where is that written, Mark?
What?
That they're more attractive?
They're certainly there.
Forest Hills, are they sunken?
I think it's to mitigate noise.
I would say if there was no tennis court, and we said that,
Wimbledon?
if there was no tennis court there, and we said as a condition, they want a tennis court with all these cottages, you have to
Totally
sink it, But this was pre-existing forever. I don't know, how long has that tennis court been there? What's the
Well,
history of
certainly
it?
before 1980, when the village just started deciding that tennis courts were structures, and therefore had to be
So it's been there
regulated.
before sunken tennis court regulations were in effect?
Oh, it's been there before the village defined a tennis court as a structure, which is around 1980.
Ordinarily wouldn't have been allowed in the front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, if this wasn't here, and I was saying I'm not going to move it, you'd be like, what, are you crazy? It's not there. I mean, you're going to move it where we tell you to move it. I get that. But I don't think moving it 20 feet does anything, particularly where you have the people in the surrounding area, albeit the person who's 350 feet away and can't see it. Everybody else seems to be fine with it. Not more than fine. They're asking you not to.
They're more concerned about killing the trees.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
If you ask them simply, would you like us to sink this tennis court, there's no detriment whatsoever to the trees on Wyandanch, they might have a different opinion.
Sure they might.
But if you go to them and say, if we sink our tennis court, we're going to kill the trees and the look of your block, then, yeah, they might say, you're right, let's not sink it.
But I think what's interesting about this is that the client was ready to start thinking the tennis court, and then some neighbors came to her, this one in particular, and said, we're very concerned about that. We don't
more concerned.
Understandably.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened. Remember the tree police were popping up? I don't know what happened to them. Remember? I don't know where they went.
I don't know where the tree police went.
Is there anybody from the floor who would like to speak? Please come up, ma'am. And introduce yourself.
Good evening, Catherine Daly, Toomey Latham, Shea and Kelly, here on behalf of Elizabeth Weymouth, 134 Wyandanch, to the south of the applicant. I'd like to hand up a letter.
That be immediately to the south?
Contiguous?
Yes.
Tennis court here.
Thank you.
The board's decision that is sought to be modified was just a year ago. It wasn't years ago. And the trees, the London plane trees, were existing at the time. My client is more concerned with the pool than the tennis court. However, the board the pool is in a conforming location. However, the 2017 decision, where Mr. Bennett said that the applicant specifically offered to mitigate the measures of keeping 3 guest houses on the property by sinking the tennis court. So this is and that was to modify a 2011 decision where this board wanted only 2 accessory houses on the property. So this is the second request to modify this board's decision. The pool, which was part of the site plan in the 2017 application, was, I believe, 100 feet farther, proposed 100 feet farther from where they are putting it now, which is 35 feet now from my client's property. So my client did not oppose the 2017 site plan because the pool was going to be 100 feet farther from her property. Now it's 35 feet from her property. And so it seems to me that if she agreed, the applicant agreed in 2017 to mitigate the measures of having 3 accessory structures on the property, so she's exchanging something for that, and now it's as if that's gone away, and they decide to move the pool to a location which is going to have a negative impact on my
What's on her
client.
property just to the south of the pool?
Yes.
What's on her property there?
The house.
Oh, yeah.
How close is the house to the pool?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I mean, I think you're beating a dead horse here. The pool is not before us. The pool is conforming.
I understand.
Keep talking about the pool.
Well, well, that's what my client is concerned with.
They're not
So your
asking for
client
anything
is
about the
using
pool.
this tree issue as a means to address the pool. Right. Is that
Well,
correct? Okay.
Yeah, I mean-
But is it us, if there was placed, again, is there a permit for the pool in that location where it is?
Yeah, it's conforming. It's
Did
even
it
more than
did it
conforming.
conform to what we agreed to?
It was never,
It was never an issue?
It was never an issue, because it's conforming.
Oh, never an issue.
Would you
Never
be
condition.
opposed to putting more
Well,
screening
it
in?
should have been a condition in the 2017 decision, but they just decided to move it. Because there were mitigating measures.
Conforming location, wasn't.
We can only rule on things that come before us for relief. The pool doesn't need relief. It didn't then, it doesn't now.
I understand. So my client would like, because of this, being sprung on her, some more sufficient screening along, and we've submitted.
Along the pool?
From the
Yeah,
tennis
along
court?
that side.
You want screening from the
property
tennis
line.
court?
It's the pool.
No, from the
No.
pool.
We're talking about changing whether we should sink the tennis court or not.
Right.
So does your client want more screening because the tennis court's not going to be sunk?
Well,
No, from the pool.
if the,
I need to understand, because what's before us is the sinking of the tennis court or not.
correct.
So the question is, if we change the condition that allows them to keep the tennis court the way it is, does your client want more screening around the existing tennis court?
Well, yes, screening around the existing tennis court and
Because she
Also-
can see the tennis court now from her house?
well, let just get, okay, and my letters up there. There's,
So this is the field of view.
Yeah.
What's over here? You can't see it.
What's the pool in that screen?
The pool's right there. The pool's in a
Yeah,
conforming.
but the original site plan, back when they got their approval, the pool was much closer to the house.
It was 100
But they
feet
changed
farther.
it between then and
Yeah,
now.
but you'd still, in the field of view, you'd still see the pool. So in other words, by moving the pool closer to the lot line, it really didn't change anything in terms of view. Maybe in terms of noise, but not view.
Right, but we got a client at that time, if the pool was located at that location when we get that approval, might have brought that up at that time.
True.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We didn't
Well, they didn't
oppose
have
the
the opportunity.
application.
But now they moved the pool.
before us.
It's in a conforming location.
I know that.
He never bought the pool before us.
What's that?
He never bought the pool before us.
Never needed
The
relief.
relief. Never needed relief.
No, I
So
know.
we never discussed the pool.
No, I know that.
It wasn't a condition. The location of the pool was not a condition, ever.
Yeah, but the original,
The original site,
the original
Site plan.
approval, 2 years ago,
Well,
the pool was
2011.
135 feet away from our house, and they moved it now closer to the house, still in a conforming location, so they didn't have to get reapproval, but at the time that they were doing the mitigation, if that pool had been shown in that location, they might have asked for mitigation at that time when you were talking about, sinking the tennis court, they might have said, yeah, how about, and then if you're doing the pool, do some screening. They were able to make the argument at the original hearing.
Were they at the original
I
hearing?
respectfully disagree.
Well,
Dan. If
Well,
you
I'm
see a
just-
pool-
Yeah,
if you
that's
see-
the argument, but
we
So
did.
that's the argument.
Yeah, that's the argument. That's the argument.
All right.
That's the argument, and what I'm saying is, my client, although she was notified of the application, didn't come because the pool would have no effect.
Well, things can change at meetings, and I guess after meetings, so she really should come.
but one
Does
doesn't.
she have
I mean,
any, does she have any opportunity to do any screening, your client?
Well, apparently, there, on the property line, on this property, the applicant's property, there's a lot of tree limbs that are hanging over that prevent her from putting up sufficient type screening.
Well, as best I know, if limbs are hanging over into that your client's property,
So
you
we
can
chop them all down?
Yeah, as long as they're not
burn them.
London plane trees.
Right.
Are they London planes?
I don't know. But I don't know
too bad.
how close they are, if they're on the property line, or, I don't know the exact circumstances of that.
Well,
But,
perhaps a request between the two parties to let's approve screening for both of us. You would think that your client might want some better screening too, if you both could get together and,
It looks like the house is about 80 feet from the pool. Right?
try to get along. Screening?
There is some screening there now, right? Proposed screening around the pool.
There's a lot of proposed screening.
Proposed screening, but not done yet.
Oh, actually, it's in. It's in, or it's bald and ready to go in. You can see it on the photographs. You can more than
Oh,
one.
it's bald and ready to go in. So you could tell your client that you really slam dunk this one.
I mean, I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'd
I
like
mean,
to
it's
see.
interesting the way this happened. We solicited, after we got the request from a few of the neighbors, that we then started soliciting other requests, and I don't want to be, but it seems like this is a ploy to, no, it's just like, okay, you want something from me on this, then do something that's totally unrelated. And so in order to try to mitigate that, there's no requirement that you screen a pool. This is very heavy heavily screened, additional screening and additional planting going in around
So
the
you've
pool.
already put it in?
It's either most of it in or it's bald and ready to go. You can walk down and see it.
What kind of plantings are there?
Well, they're shown on the
Plan.
We submitted a planting plan.
Here.
It might be a moot point.
It is a moot point.
They're there, right there.
I'd say the
It's
lady.
coated.
Success, we got it.
But it's a very, very significant planting plan around the pool. What happened was Patrick sent me a plan where Ms. Weymouth wanted a whole line of screening along the property line. And to me, again, there's just what is that, a service drive where it's? No, this is just the boundary line. There's nothing. Oh, right here? No,
It's a service entrance that...
this right? No, this is an entrance for one of the cottages.
No, on the...
He's talking about right here.
Oh, I think that's just I don't know what he said. Oh, that's how they do an area. It's just an area.
It's a service entrance, so, you're screening...
A service entrance. But
It looks like a win-win.
we offered to do that. There's no requirement for screening a pool, but there's quite a bit in there because Ms. Peterson wanted to at least do what she could over here in the area for the pool. I do also want to say that, yes, there was a prior plan that showed the pool in a different area, but there was a placeholder. There was no condition that it stay there, and if somebody wants to come in and talk about an additional condition, it's up to them to say, well, okay, you've got this pool in a conforming location here, but if you want my consent to it, I want you to put it over there. It was never part of a condition.
Right.
And it's in a conforming location, and we're not here to talk about the pool.
It was not foreseen.
Well, we spent an awful lot of time talking about it.
Yeah, I know, and it looks like your client is getting something, so I say
I do-
say did a good job. I think your client is
another
getting
question for you.
some screening here, right? I declare victory. And, sir, I'm sorry, have you finished?
No, thank you very much
All
for your
right.
time.
I have
Now.
a question for John.
Yes.
Back when we were talking about screening for the tennis court, you had talked about arborvitae or some type of decorative fence. But if you did a decorative fence, is that something we would want to see first?
Oh, it's there. It's on the alternate plan. It's a decorative fence. And again,
There's a spec on the fence?
it's on the second page.
The inset photo.
It's on the inset photo. So it's a high, sort of heavy lattice sort of look. But again, I'm doing something somewhat unusual. It's like an A or a B. I just don't, if you
The
don't,
fence would be inside the hedge, right?
it'll be inside the hedge.
So what you would see from Wyandanch
You'd
is...
see a stockade fence, 4 feet, I might add, because it's in the front yard, then privet, and then instead of the cyclone fence that's there now, in front of it, you'd see this decorative lattice.
Yeah, rather than arborvitae.
Yes. Or if you can't get there, I mean, I just, again, I don't want to, I'm
Talking
asking.
about one with screening, with arborvitae, and one without.
Yes, exactly.
So John, you're saying this existing falling down fence is going to remain? Do you know?
Or replace it.
Or would it be better not to put that fence there at all if you're going to put a
Take it out,
fence on
that's
the
fine.
inside?
That's fine. If you want to say take it
It
out.
seems to be
Yeah.
Take it out.
better and leave
As a
the...
condition, take it out. It's probably healthier for the,
I was going to say, would that be
healthier
more
for
healthier
the
for the
privet,
hedge?
It's
yeah.
all about the trees. So yeah, if that,
And then put the decorative fence on the inside of between that and the tennis court.
So it would be privet, decorative fence, tennis court, because the whole idea is to buffer it from the road.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that would be wonderful. That would be more in line with what the arborist says.
what-
But I don't, I don't know
We're
if you
talking about
guys
the
could get there.
trees,
That's
so
all, so I gave you those two
I
alternatives.
think we should go with the arborist. Although it was your arborist.
Well, there are two.
we should get our own arborist.
That was one of the things we were talking about.
We don't have an arborist?
We need one.
We're going to have one sitting right over there next to Chick from now on. For every meeting. Every meeting.
So anyway, that's pretty much, I'm in your guys' hands with this.
So what do you need? Do you need guidance from us as to what we prefer?
No,
So you write it up?
either, hopefully if you're not going to you're going to remove the condition, that would be great. I'm in your hands as to whether or not you want it on the screen
that's it.
or not. That's up to you guys.
I think what we propose, you need to have your arborist, your landscape architect looked at. We'll look at it as well with whoever Chick can consult with.
What about what?
You have to make sure it works.
We're going to have our own arborist.
If you're going to propose what we just described, the fence, the privet, and no fence
It's just a matter
outside.
of taking the board fence out. as a
That'll work.
condition. That's all that can be.
Yeah, I'm just saying that you have landscape architects that
Also,
wanna
maybe
make sure it
you
works,
get
that's
a
all.
report on the health of the hedge, it's an old hedge, and now you take the fence out, and then it's shaded under the trees, so you want a hedge that's going to be well established.
There's a well-established privet there. You can see it now in the photographs. It is.
Okay, so you think that, just if
At least
they
on the
maintain
top,
that, it's
though,
going to...
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening here on the lower
Well, it
side
can be,
with the
it
fence.
can be supplemented. That's fine. We can do that.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It
So
can
that privet is
supplement the
unbound.
privet. Just,
Yeah, you could even
it's a
prune it a
bit.
little bit.
I think the ultimate question is, do you want it to?
What are we doing here?
Yes. So, thank you.
Right. Okay.
I like Plan B. I don't know what the other.
I like Plan B.
Yep.
Okay. Plan B is no extra planting, but
Right.
if you want to condition it that we take that stockade fence out, that's fine.
Okay. It's old and rotten. Take it out.
And you're going to put the screen fence on the other side by the tennis court.
Yeah.
That's Plan B.
So, anyway, what is our task, though?
Well, I guess I'm going to say
Task
this, even though the TV is on, I might get yelled tomorrow. Hollander doesn't.
Our task was simply to, so what's before us is a removal of the requirement to sink a court.
In exchange for removing the stockade fence and putting in a decorative fence around the tennis court.
Well, but the facts of removing the requirement to sink the court,
Yeah, but those are the conditions.
All right, those are the conditions.
Yeah.
All right, can we make a decision or what?
No,
I would suggest you close it so we can properly rate it.
All right,
So moved.
Thank you.
Close the
Second.
all in favor? All righty.
It's only like 5 minutes. There's nobody left.
That was the last one, wasn't it?
These guys wanted an arborist.
They want an
Keep to 5 minutes.
Oh, John's left.
All right, 3023 472 First Neck Lane.
Oh,
So, why do your cases keep coming back to haunt us?
Ka-ching.
Gonna get it right the first time?
For the record,
The first 2 or 3 times.
For the record, I'm recused on this case. I'll sit here with my ears closed, but this is primarily Chick's.
Right.
Do you need a form? Oh, maybe not.
Does he need a form? Does he need a form?
I've already filed
Oh,
it
you're allowed it.
Beat on the ball.
a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So this is really an attempt to make everyone, the applicant and all of their neighbors and some various community groups happy, to be very honest with you. The board did grant an approval. A lawsuit ensued. That lawsuit has now been voluntarily withdrawn. There are some understandings about what would happen as a result of the withdrawal of that lawsuit, and what you're seeing before you is one of those things. So really, we're asking for a modification of a prior approval. I think what really drives this approval, the approval that you've given, what really drove the approval that you gave is not at all changing, which is nothing's coming closer to the wetlands than the existing house. Where there's lawn right down to Agawam, there will be a 50-foot variable width buffer. And we're getting rid of a pre-existing non-conforming guest house, and we're installing a
an IA system, right? IA?
That's correct.
There's a small bit of coverage increase, about 102 square feet within the 150-foot setback, and an increase of coverages for porches of 608 square feet over what the board granted. Actually, the gross floor area of the residence will decrease, not by a lot, but somewhere between 122 and 150 square feet. So no portion of the residence or the porch will be relocated closer to the wetlands than the existing residence. And though the garage was shifted slightly west within the property, it would still be in excess of 700 feet from First Neck Lane, so you don't have the issues that would particularly, that are created with a garage in the front yard. So I think unless Chick has some concerns, which I'm praying and hoping that he doesn't, that really what drove you to grant this application and made you comfortable with granting the application in its original form, all of that is still a part of this application, still on the table, and hopefully you'll agree with that. And it also it does away with lawsuits and a lot of acrimony, and everyone's happy with this, which is something that's not to be understated, I hope.
Anybody on the board want to put a monkey wrench in the thing?
I think since everyone else is happy with this now, I'm happy with this, yes.
Anybody from the audience want to speak to it? I don't know how to proceed. I think we maybe have to close for decision because somebody has to write it up.
Rob, I'll just make a couple of quick remarks.
Oh, okay.
I agree with what John said. I think we all remember this application very well. One additional benefit that John didn't mention that was part of the consideration was moving the driveway back farther as well. And I think given the weighing of all of the benefits that John just mentioned, the IA system, the variable 50-foot buffer, moving the driveway back, we didn't heavily emphasize the coverage within the 150-foot area. I think it's good that they quantified it. It is an increase, but I'd be hard-pressed to say that that in itself is going to have an adverse environmental impact when we have all of these other benefits. And the key point is that all of those improvements are farther than the existing porch and existing house. And the other big thing that, it's certainly in the papers on the record, but wasn't mentioned just now, architecturally, this is a much different character than what was proposed previously. That's not really a wetlands consideration, but I think the consolidation, the separation, reviewing these things for a long time, it's a more pleasing architectural outcome. So I think that's why the neighbors have supported it, and I guess that's really what resulted in the settlement. So I'd be happy to write a decision to recognize the modification if the board would like to proceed with that for the next meeting.
Yes, we would, I think.
Yes.
We need a motion to close.
I move we close this application for decision.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now move we close this meeting.
Meeting is closed.